Okay, I think we're ready. Ms. Rivers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Judge. Hello, can you hear me?
You can hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. We may end up having some echo in the courtroom. We'll get the IT folks here to work on that. Let me see if I turn that. Is that better? Nope, still echo. Ms. Nelson, do you mind reaching out to our friends at IT?
Yes, Judge, I will.
Thank you. If you can hear and there's not a weird echo for you, Ms. Rivers, we can do some of the procedural things we need to do. Are things okay on your end, or is there a bad echo there?
I don't have a bad echo.
Okay, great. Well, let's get started. We won't take any evidence until we can get someone to help us with the technology here. This is 18 SC 161143, State versus Jose Armando Cabrera. Ms. Hall is here for the state. Good afternoon. Great. Have you been in 8D since we moved here? Well, welcome. It's a little cozier than 1D. Ms. Stern represents Mr. Cabrera. Ms. Stern is here again, and Mr. Cabrera is here. Hello, Mr. Cabrera. We have a motion to suppress that we're going to work through today that Ms. Stern filed a long time ago. We have tried on a number of occasions to hear it. There have been a number of good reasons that we've had to continue it, but today is the day. We have, lurking in the background, I'm mindful, a motion to reveal a confidential informant. What I've explained to the lawyers is that I will rule on that definitively after I've heard this motion, which will give me more information about the facts and circumstances surrounding the stop of Mr. Cabrera and what was found. Because it's my limited understanding from a conversation we had many months ago about the confidential informant that Mr. Cabrera took a couple car rides and there may have been some intervening events that would affect the court's analysis of whether the CI is a tipster or a participant or what, and how I assess the CI's role affects what, if anything, needs to be disclosed. Ms. Hall, do you have the witnesses here that you need to move forward? Okay.
I'm not hearing Ms. Hall. Her microphone is muted.
Why don't you try unmute? Can you unmute them? Okay. Let me see if I can do that. This is a different setup than when we have Zoom sessions. Nope. Okay, well, that will be a reason to not go much further than this because Ms. Rivers can't hear the attorneys. Ms. Stern, you have everyone you need? Okay, when we can get you on the record, we'll get that on the record. Sure. Ms. Nelson has contacted IT, so hopefully someone will be here soon. You guys can be at ease for a minute. Either way, I think it's unlocked, so you can go in there. Sure.
Good evening, Judge. I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to know if you need me today for this motion.
I don't think so. Ms. Stern just stepped outside. Let me wait for the defense attorney to come back, and I'll
Okay.
ask one question and I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Hold on before you go, since Ms. Stern is back. Ms. Stern, we have a probation officer who is someone from DCS who is dialed in, and she asked if she would be needed. None of your announcements was going to be that the case is resolved. Okay. Ms. Crawford, you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Say again? Yes, ma'am. Just sort of right outside? Great. You, yeah, what room? A little antechamber? That's fine. As long as you are both easy to find. Okay, sorry about the delay. Ms. Stern, try the podium. Ms. Rivers, can you hear anyone from the podium? You're on mute.
The podium shows that it's on mute.
Nope. Okay. So this machine is supposed to be part of the process, and that's what controls it all. It's not listed on here, which is probably why we're getting this weird echo. And so they've reached out to IT. IT is in a bunch of other courtrooms right now. So we're you can try. I don't know how you'll get on that computer, but yeah. Go ahead. It's not going to shock you. Hello. So we've got an echo and all the microphones are muted, and the litigation manager's computer is not part of the call. And so I'm guessing that's part of the problem. Is the big screen on? Okay. No, but I think this is the one that can, I don't know, I was told that that's right. I was led to believe that that's sort of the master control computer. And okay. Okay. Whichever computer will make it work for us would be great.
Judge, I don't see the litigation manager computer on. And I think that's the one that was controlling the sound before.
It's not muted. But then if I turn this on, I think she can hear me. Now can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. You want me to do what now? Should I mute my computer first? Ms. Rivers, are you there? Oh, she's on mute.
I can hear you.
Great, I can hear you. Mr. Cabrera, will you try talking in that microphone for me? Just say, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
This is how it normally works. Okay, so someone didn't connect lit manager.
Right, my apologies, George, Judge, I wasn't told it needed to be.
That's okay, I know, because in some courtrooms, I think it's the,
Majority is the podium, yes.
okay, maybe because this is one of the FTR courtrooms?
I think so, exactly.
Could be.
Thank you.
All right, don't be hard to find. Okay, can we get are all the lawyers back there? They're resolving the case. Are you a colleague of Ms. Stern's? Yeah. Great, if you don't mind getting them in here, that'd be great. All right, Ms. Stern, why don't you test out the microphone? I think Ms. Rivers should be able to hear you. She could hear your client.
It's showing me on mute.
It's okay.
Okay, mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hi, Ms. Rivers.
Hi, Ms. Stern. How are you? I can hear you.
Great. Ms. Hall, you want to test out yours?
Good morning, Ms. Rivers.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good
I mean, good
afternoon.
afternoon. I'm sorry.
I know, it probably feels like it's Tuesday morning now. All right, let us resume where we left off. We have all the right people. We're in the right courtroom. And I had asked Ms. Hall if she had the witnesses she needed. That's when we learned that the microphones weren't working. The sound system wasn't working. Ms. Hall's answer was she, in fact, has 3 witnesses here, but she intends, for now at least, to call only 1. So state's ready. Ms. Stern said there were a few things she wanted to get on the record before we went any further. So now's the time.
Okay, Anna, thank you. As Your Honor mentioned when we started, there are 2 motions pending, and I understand the court's position in terms of hearing the motion to reveal after this hearing today. But I'd like to orally request some motions in limine as it relates to this hearing, and it also relates to some discovery challenges as well that we've had so far in the case. I have had a much more difficult time preparing for this hearing than most others in 15 years or so, just because of the evidentiary challenges so far and the way that the state has chosen to give us evidence or not give us evidence. One of the issues is that at the last hearing, Your Honor ordered the state to provide us with all CAD, dispatch, and recording related materials. We had submitted an open records request or subpoena, I think actually a subpoena, and Sandy Springs hadn't complied with that by the time we were here last. After the hearing, the state did provide me with 1 2-page log for Officer Wachowski, but that's all that they provided. And I have spoken with the state, and they said that's all that exists. But there were numerous officers at the scene. There's K-9 squad. There were multiple different officers and units there, and that's the only thing that was provided. I am concerned about Brady violations here, Your Honor, for that being one, but also most importantly, this case is relying on the information from a confidential informant. And while the identity may not be something that's revealed at this point, we have received no evidence at all of anything that supposedly occurred prior to the date of the arrest or prior to the supposed transaction that was happening.
So let me narrow this a little bit for what I think we need to work through today. Why are we today focused on anything more than, was it a valid window tint traffic stop? And could the Uber driver give consent? If he did, they get in the car. And then really, if you narrow it to the Fourth Amendment issues, what about the law enforcement interaction with your client on that day? Who the CI is doesn't have anything to do with, there's a blue car, not the car your client got in originally, but a second car later on from a different location. He gets in it. There's a valid stop or there's not, I think. I mean, I'm asking because I'm here to be educated. There's a stop of that blue Uber. Out of that car comes your client. Out of your client comes drugs. And so we'll work through, did you get all the other CAD stuff? But that doesn't have anything to do with, did that officer who interacted with your client do so in a constitutionally adequate manner?
And that lends itself to my request for the motion in Your Honor, because as long as the state is going to limit themselves to those issues, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
But if the state then needs to rely upon any information that supposedly was in the officer's mind or memory that gave rise to probable cause or something like that, we're asking that that be limited because we have not been given the opportunity to examine any of that. We've not been given any statements that have been made by Mr. Cabrera in terms of what he may or may not have said or may or may not have done prior to this traffic stop. So I just wanted to highlight that for the court in terms of where I think we're going to end up in this hearing.
Okay, so my thought is, rather than preventing the state from getting into that, should the state get into that, when we're done today, I'd invite you to say, okay, please don't close the record yet, because I'm hearing for the first time that Officer X called Officer Y, or there may be things you learned today that you didn't know before, and the state's going to need to explain why you didn't get to know that. In other words, here's a report they had that you didn't get. I'm pretty sure Ms. Hall's not sitting on reports that she hasn't given you. It may be that she hasn't been able to get everything from Sandy Springs. I see that happen more often, not because anyone's willfully concealing it, just their breakdowns. Not your problem. You need to get this stuff. But what I'd prefer to do is, if there's a question that gets into an area where you're surprised that this information is out there, just keep track of that. And then we'll talk about it at the end to say, all right, I don't want to close the record because it may be that you'd want to call Officer Smith when we do part 2 of this hearing, because you didn't know there was an Officer Smith involved, because you've read every piece of paper you've been given and there's no mention of Officer Smith.
The reason I'm bringing it up in the motion of limiting is to try to avoid so many objections in the middle of the hearing, and I'll be happy to do that to make the record if that's Your Honor's instruction. But I won't be able to just wait for the end of the hearing, just because there are aspects to that after it's within Your Honor's knowledge, I have not had an opportunity to verify anything independently or cross-examine the officer as it relates to that, especially if it has something to do with my client making a statement or something that would require some other independent strategy or defense planning.
Okay, well, why don't we see how it unfolds? It may be that I need to revisit the approach to this, given the concerns you've raised. But for now, rather than, I don't know exactly what I would be limiting the state to, I'll ask you to highlight when you feel like the state has entered into an area that really you ought to have known about before this hearing. And then we'll pause and I'll have a better feel for maybe what's missing and what's not. And then we'll figure out how to go from there.
Understood.
A clarification question.
Sure, I gotta make sure that
Shama,
Ms. Rivers can hear you.
Hear me, Ms. Rivers?
Well, she can now because you're talking to the microphone.
I'm just going to stay right here then.
Okay.
Judge, we have a response for the CADs whenever the court wants us to, but my question is, are you expecting testimony, or would you like just this? I have an answer for that question.
Well, why don't you answer that one now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, Judge. So basically, I spoke with the detectives about, yes, were there numerous people, but we only have one CAD. And he says in Sandy Springs, the only CAD is generated when it's on the public dispatch is when it's generated. And so the only person who did the public dispatch was Wachowski. Every other communication occurred on a different radio that was a private and secure that officers use. So there is no other CADs out there. They were never generated.
Okay, I'm familiar with systems like that. Do you know, and it could be we just ask one of the officers who testifies, if there are recordings made of this other channel?
I asked that as well, Your Honor, and he advised that it would have to be done beforehand and somebody would have to get special permission from their captain people or the 911. And that is not a regular course of business. That is not what they normally do.
Okay. Well, Ms. Stern, you may want to ask whoever the state calls about that so we get it in the record. That makes more sense given what you've run into, that it's how it works. As you've learned in your years of practice, every municipality seems to do it somewhat differently. And some, they seem to record every breath of every officer, and others, it's the triggering call, that causes a situation, but all of the officer back and forth, if it's not on a body cam, then we don't get that. Okay, I'm not suggesting that's the only thing that you're missing, but that's responsive at least to CAD. Let's do the hearing and see what comes up, because that may shed more light on whether there are missing materials, or if in fact, in particular, for the officer who conducted the traffic stop and then who interacted with Mr. Cabrera, all this other stuff that may be going on, whether there was a larger federal investigation and who the CI is, it may not be material to the constitutional issues you've raised in your motion to suppress. Okay. So Ms. Hall or Ms. Iqbal, when you are ready to call your witness.
And there's one more quick point of clarification. This is, you're challenging the stop, not there. The defense did make one statement, which is in the reports. Is that what you're also going to be challenging?
I'll address it.
Okay, so we're going to hit that too.
Well, I guess I read the motion as seeking to suppress what was seized from him with what was in his jacket. So I didn't read anything about a statement. I assume from what Ms. Stern was saying, she didn't know if her client made a statement, but it sounds like she knows he made at least one statement. That doesn't mean we can't talk about it, but the way I read the four corners of the motion to suppress, it is focused on and limited to the contraband that was seized from Mr. Cabrera's jacket pocket.
Yes, in terms of particularizing it for as like a Jackson Dano or something like that, that wasn't done. I would argue that the seizure of statements that came from an illegal stop would be part of the fruit of.
Okay, the state needs to know so that they ask the witness questions.
Also, just in terms of discovery purposes, at the last hearing, I was given a bit more from a reporting standpoint than I had at the time that I filed the motions as well. So I've been getting kind of triple reports that have come from the time I originally filed.
Okay. But so we're clear, you are seeking to suppress the contraband that was seized as well as some statement that your client gave.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's get the witness in.
Your Honor, the state calls Officer Rennells to the stand.
Can you spell that for the, well, I guess it'll be spelled when you swear him in. So we're good.
And Your Honor,
Where are they hiding?
right outside the courtroom
Okay,
in the.
here he comes. No, that's good. I just want to make sure someone was getting him.
James Rennells, last name is spelled Reynells.
Good afternoon. Is it Sergeant, Officer, Major?
The detective is fine.
Detective Rennells. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Officer Renels. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for being here. Where do you currently work?
The Sandy Springs Police Department?
And where were you working there back on July the 31st, 2018?
Yes, I was.
And what are some of your duties?
During that time frame, I was a canine handler in the special operations section of the department.
And how long have you been employed with the Sandy Springs Police Department?
Just under 10 years.
And how long have you been a canine handler?
I was a canine handler for 6 years. I'm no longer a canine handler. I'm now in the narcotics unit.
Okay. And on July 31st, 2018, were you post-certified?
Yes, I was.
Were you involved in a traffic stop that occurred at 5300 Roswell Road?
Yes, I was.
Was that located in Fulton County?
It is.
And that stop was on July 31st, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it the 21st or the 31st?
I believe it's the 31st.
I-
Have I been saying the 21st?
I'm just curious. The motion says the 21st. The date's whatever the date is. If he needs to, want to make sure we're building off the. Okay.
Did that stop happen on July 31st of 2018?
Yes.
Do you know who was operating the vehicle? Or let me go back a step. Do you know how that traffic stop occurred or what that traffic stop, why that traffic stop occurred?
Yes, Detective Cannon with our street crimes unit had conducted a stop on the vehicle for a window tint violation, and it also had an obstructed tag frame on the license plate.
Can you spell Cannon?
CANNON.
Okay.
And do you remember how you got involved in the stop?
Yes, Detective Cannon had stopped the vehicle along with Detective Snow, and they requested my assistance with the stop.
And do you remember how long it took for you to arrive to the scene?
I don't recall, but it was a short period of time. I was very close to where the stop was, which was a Shell station, or excuse me, a Chevron station.
Okay.
Detective, does Sandy Springs, when they need canine backup, do they say, we need Rennell's or whatever the dog's name was? Or do they simply say canine support and you got assigned to it?
I was helping that day with them. So they would just ask for the canine handler that was helping.
Okay, and that you were that person that day? Okay.
Can I just ask that Detective Renos puts the mic up a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
What was the dog's name?
Django, he's retired now.
DJANGO, like the movie?
Yes, Judge.
Okay.
Officer Reynolds, I know you said you're in narcotics now, but before you transferred over to narcotics, were you familiar or did you deal with drug transactions?
Yes, so my primary concern with being a canine handler was mostly with narcotics and drug enforcement.
And do you remember about how often you dealt with drug cases?
Yeah, it would have been on a daily basis.
So you're very familiar with the smell of marijuana?
Yes,
Objection to leading.
Are you familiar with the smell of marijuana?
I am.
Do you remember who was operating the vehicle at the time of the stop?
It was a female. I don't know her name.
And when you arrived on scene, did you talk with the officers that were already present?
I did.
What did the officer tell you?
I spoke with Detective Snow, who explained to me that he could smell what he recognized to be marijuana coming from the vehicle, the odor of marijuana.
Do you remember how many people were in the vehicle when you arrived?
There was two, the female driver and then the defendant in the back seat on the right side.
So Snow is different from Cannon.
Yes, he's a different detective, yes.
Okay, he was on the scene too.
Yes, he was.
Was there other officers other than Officer Cannon and Officer Snow on the scene?
Yes, there was myself, Detective Cannon, Detective Snow, and canine handler DeWald was there at some point.
Okay.
Can you spell his last or her last name?
Yes, DEWALD.
And that's a person, not a canine.
Yes, Judge.
And that's a different canine handler.
Yes, we were both canine handlers. We were partners at the time, myself and DeWald.
Okay, and canine handler DeWald also have a dog, or Django was the only dog there?
So basically how it works in our department is we both have dogs in separate vehicles. So he would have had his dog, but he didn't use that dog this particular incident.
So the only dog that was out and about was Django?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Officer Reynolds, I'm sorry, Renels, I'm gonna take you back to when you arrived to the scene. You said that there were 2 individuals in the vehicle, a driver and a passenger. Can you explain where they were seated? Well, I know the driver was seated in the driver's seat, but where was the other passenger?
He was on the right rear side of the vehicle in a passenger seat.
Okay. After you spoke with Officer Snow, when you were speaking with Officer Snow, did you observe the defendant do anything?
Yes, I saw the window where he was sitting start to roll up.
What were you and Officer Snow talking about when you saw the window roll up?
He was explaining to me about how they had.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay.
So in the context of a suppression hearing, tell me what your concern is.
Well, my understanding is that the secretary is not a witness here today.
Mhm.
And, the factors involved for a search in terms of probable cause, you need to be independently observed by the witnesses that are here. And that's not what we have in this moment.
Okay, I'll allow it. So you were telling us what Snow was telling you?
Yes, Judge. She was basically explaining to me that he smelled marijuana coming from the vehicle where the defendant was sitting.
And at that point, you saw the defendant, you observed the defendant roll up
That's
the
correct. Yeah.
back window. Were you guys were still positioned at that vehicle when you all were talking?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact location where we were standing, but it would have been like behind the vehicle, like towards the trunk, somewhere in there.
Where the defendant could possibly hear what you all were talking about?
Correct. We weren't far away.
So it's loosely leading, it's more speculative, but I appreciate that he's speculating as to whether the defendant could hear him or not.
Thank you.
What happened after you spoke with Officer Snow?
They had both vehicle occupants, the defendant and the driver were removed from the vehicle, and they stood off to the side, and I conducted a canine inspection with my dog for the odor of controlled substances.
What kind of car are we talking about, if you remember?
It was a 4-door passenger vehicle. I believe it was a Lexus.
So the driver and the defendant get out, and you and Django do what you do.
That's correct.
What was the reason for the passengers being told to get out of the vehicle, or I think you said removed from the vehicle?
When we do canine inspections of vehicles, the passengers are not allowed to stay inside for safety reasons, because our dogs in Sandy Springs are dual purpose, meaning they not only detect drugs, but they also are used for apprehension work. So there's obviously safety concerns there. So we had both the occupants of the vehicle step out.
And at that point, what happened with the canine?
I deployed my dog around the vehicle, and he subsequently alerted to the right rear passenger area of the vehicle for the odor of a drug or controlled substance that he's trained and certified to detect.
Was that the only location Django alerted to?
No, ma'am. So after he alerted to the vehicle, I opened the door where the defendant was sitting and put him inside the car, and he again alerted to the seat where the defendant was sitting in the back.
Okay. Were you able to recover any contraband or any drugs from the vehicle?
No.
What did you do after you searched the vehicle and there were no drugs located?
I spoke with the defendant, who was like underneath where the gas station shelter is of the store. I could smell marijuana coming from his person as I spoke to him, and he admitted to me that he had smoked marijuana earlier in the day. And subsequent to all that, we searched his pockets, subsequent to a pat down, and recovered about 86 grams of cocaine or suspected cocaine from his pocket.
When you said the defendant told you he smoked earlier,
Mhm.
were you asking him a question when he gave you the answer?
I don't recall. I just know that he told me he smoked marijuana earlier in the day.
I know you said you smelled it coming from his person.
Yes.
Did you tell him that you smelled marijuana coming from his person?
I don't recall. I'm sure that I did. I typically would.
After you could smell the marijuana, what happened after that? After you told him and you could smell it, what happened after that?
We searched his pockets with a pat down and recovered about 86 grams of suspected cocaine from his pocket.
I want to make sure I heard one word you mentioned. Did you say subsequent? In other words, pat down first and then you search the pockets? Okay.
Were you able to see anything from the defendant's pockets before the pat down?
Yes. So as he was standing there, you could see about a baseball-sized lump in his pocket.
When you say pocket, pants pocket, jacket pocket, what do you recall?
I don't recall without referring to my report. If it was a jacket pocket or his pants pocket, I can't recall right now.
Okay. But in a pocket, you recall seeing what you described as a baseball-sized lump.
Correct.
Officer Renels, if you don't remember, one moment. If you don't remember where you actually retrieved the drugs from, if you're looking at your report, would that refresh your memory?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may. Are you able to leave a report with him so you don't
Yes.
have to shuttle back and forth? Great.
What is this?
Well, just so she knows what it is.
It was his right front jacket pocket.
And you said you were able to actually see that bulge
Yes.
in his,
Yes.
and based on your training and experience, what would that bulge have been?
Before, apparently Ms. Hall is being told to reformulate the question. Did you pat the defendant down or you were present while someone patted him down?
I don't recall. Typically, it's my behavior to pat someone down. I don't have a report if I patted them down, but I don't remember if I did or not, but it's my typical behavior too.
Okay. But so your testimony wasn't, I saw someone pat him down. It was, if I did what I normally do, Officer Reynolds, patted him down.
Correct.
Okay.
And Your Honor, I'm sorry, Officer Renels, when you pat down someone and if there's a bulge there, in your training and experience, what does that likely indicate?
Well, it could be a weapon or it could be some sort of illegal substance.
When you did the pat down, when you patted down, or when you were present for the pat down, or when someone conducted the pat down, did you feel the bulge in the defendant's pocket?
Objection, he's already answered, but he doesn't remember.
Well, I don't think he can, if he didn't do the pat down, he couldn't have felt what was in the pocket. So I guess we need to establish, you think there was a pat down and you think you did it. Do you recall? And not recalling is fine. This was 2.5 years ago.
I don't remember. It's been 3 years.
Yeah, I guess it is almost 3 years now. Do you recall if you were the one who extracted the cocaine from the pocket?
Cocaine on the spot.
Okay, so let's work backwards from there. So you removed the cocaine. Did you do that because Snow or Cannon said, hey, take that thing out of his pocket? Or what can you tell us about why you removed something from Mr. Cabrera's pocket?
Your Honor, we asked that question in a different way, if that's allowed.
Sure, yeah, just go ahead and try.
Officer, when you were conducting a pat down, in your training experience, what are you specifically looking for?
For weapons.
Okay, and then are you, okay, so in your training experience, if you can identify, if you have reason to believe it's other than a weapon, like contraband or drugs,
Mhm.
do you have the ability to be able to take it out of his pocket then?
Yes,
And what indication what did you think it was when you did the pat down?
I thought it was some sort of illegal substance based off his behavior, the odor of marijuana coming from his person, from the vehicle, and from the dog alert to the vehicle and to the seat where he was sitting.
And you just mentioned his behavior. What was his behavior like?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, when we were speaking, I was talking to Detective Snow, I saw him roll the window up, which I thought was odd at the time. And then he was very quiet, not very engaging, as I recall. And I just found his behavior to be odd.
Did you ask him if he would consent to search his person?
I did, yes.
And what did he say?
He would not.
Okay. And so when you were doing the pat down and you felt the bulge, and is it correct that you were under the impression that it possibly could be drugs?
Correct.
Okay. And so there we go. Next. What did you do after you pulled out the drugs?
Basically, I pulled it out. You could see clearly that it was cocaine because it was in a clear bag. He was placed under arrest and put in Detective Cannon's patrol vehicle, and he was taken to headquarters, and I took the drugs to headquarters.
And just to clarify, other than him saying that he smoked marijuana earlier that day, did the defendant make any other statements?
Not that I'm aware of.
And do you see the defendant, the individual that you conducted the pat down and found the drugs in? You see that individual here?
I do.
Can you please point him out and describe what he is wearing?
Yes, sorry. He's the defendant wearing a coat jacket and I believe a blue shirt, and a mask, blue mask.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness identified the defendant as the individual.
Only guy with a blue mask at defense counsel's table. Noted.
No. So, and just a couple more questions going back. When you said you observed, you smelled marijuana on his person, were there any other people around? Or was he standing by himself?
Just officers around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but the driver of the Uber was not around.
Section.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
It's just 2 words. Was the driver of the Uber right next to the defendant while this was happening?
I don't recall specifically where she was at, but she was not standing right there when I was talking to the defendant.
And now, when you, after you smelled it on his person, did you make any observations of whether or not you could continue to smell marijuana in the vehicle?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying.
So after you identified that the smell of marijuana was coming from his person, did you make any observations, or did you get the chance to tell if the smell was still coming from the vehicle or had it dissipated?
So after the dog alert, we searched the car and found no marijuana in the car and no evidence of marijuana. As I recall.
Which came first, the search of the car or the pat down of Mr. Cabrera?
The car.
Okay.
One moment, Your Honor. Okay, and just to verify, officer, other than the driver and the passenger, was there any other civilian layperson at the scene?
No.
Okay, Your Honor, no further questions for now.
Okay. I have a couple, and then we'll see if Ms. Stern has any. Did you seek consent from the driver of the Lexus to search the Lexus, or was it predicated only on Django's alert?
So after the dog alerted to the car, I spoke to the driver and explained to her that the dog alerted to the car for the odor of a drug. And at that time, she said I could search the car.
Okay. You patted Mr. Cabrera down. Was that before or after you sought his consent to search him? Because a pat down and a search can be, from an officer's perspective, I get it, two different things. One is more intrusive than the other.
I don't remember, Judge.
Okay, but you know that you patted him down. Well, someone patted him down, but you testified that you did ask Mr. Cabrera, hey, could we search you?
Yes.
And your sense was he understood you, and his answer was no or no, thank you, whatever he said.
He declined.
Okay. I think that's it from me for now. Ms. Stern?
May I ask one more question based upon what you asked?
Sure.
Also, did you get any indication that at any time the defendant did not understand English or understand you or what was going on?
No, not that I recall. He seemed to understand me, understand the officers.
All right, Ms. Stern?
Just, I'm so sorry, one more thing. I do apologize.
Okay.
When you pulled out the pouch of the package from the defendant's jacket, was it in a clear bag or opaque bag?
It wasn't a clear bag. You could clearly see that there was a white substance that I recognized to be cocaine.
And was that tested on scene? I know that there's.
It was tested at our headquarters and it tested positive for cocaine.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
Ms. Stern?
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you prefer to stay at defense table or is it okay if I go to the podium?
Podium is
Go to
fine.
the
If you're more
podium.
comfortable with that.
Oh, Ms. Rivers would prefer the podium, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sorry, Ms. Rivers.
All right, Detective Raynels, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. When did you get involved in this operation from the very first instance?
After Detective Cannon did the traffic stop, they called us over to the scene at the Chevron.
You mentioned that you were already kind of lined up with this crew for the day. Is that right?
Right.
So were you aware ahead of time that this traffic stop was going to take place?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
Yes.
Okay. How far in advance were you aware?
I don't know the time frame, but at least that day, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember.
Is it possible that you were aware the day before?
It's possible. I don't remember.
Could it have been a few days before?
Again, I don't know. I don't know.
So this was not a scenario where you were just the on-call K-9 unit that day. You got called on, through dispatch. You were aware that this was going to be taking place beforehand.
Yes.
Okay. Were you involved in any way with any of the interactions with the CI?
No.
Okay, so are you aware at all of that part of the
That side of it?
investigation?
No, I know
Okay.
nothing about that.
So you have no independent knowledge of what really preceded the stop?
Well, I knew that the operation was going on and that there was intelligence based off the information about the vehicle traveling with the defendant.
In terms of the intelligence, were you just told by Detective Cannon or investigator?
The case agent, Detective Witkowski.
Okay, so this, as far as you know, this is investigator Witkowski's case.
He is a primary case agent, yes.
Okay,
Can we spell his name for Ms. Rivers? She was not here for our first session.
Witkowski.
Thank you.
Sorry.
and are you told by investigator Witkowski there's some intelligence and there's some undercover investigation going on, just generally in that way, or were you actually told what that intelligence was?
I was told what the intelligence was.
Okay, so aside from what you were told about that intelligence by investigator Witkowski, did you have any independent knowledge of that?
As far as me talking to,
The confidential informant
No.
or being present for any conversations beforehand with Mr. Cabrera, any of the setup before this
No.
traffic stop?
No.
Okay, so everything that you know about this investigation is through what investigator Witkowski has told you?
correct.
Did you produce any other report beyond the one that's in front of you, the one that's titled July 31st, 2018, on-duty supplemental case report?
No, the only case report I would have done is this one. It's a K-9 supplemental for that specific incident at the Chevron.
Okay, and that's about 1.5 pages, is that right?
About, yeah.
Okay. So going back to your initial law enforcement history and experience, you've been a law enforcement officer since 2007. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. 1 year with Gwinnett County.
2 years.
Okay. You took about a year and a half off in between, though. Is that right?
That's correct.
Why did you resign?
I left to go back to college at Georgia State.
Okay, great. So then after college, you went back to the same department?
Gwinnett, yeah.
Okay. Were you also working at the time while in school?
I worked at a grocery store part-time.
Okay.
But that was it, yeah.
Publix or Kroger?
Publix.
All right.
I was a stalker.
I'm just curious in terms of the requirements, are you not allowed to still be working on the force while you're also going to school, or is it just not possible?
Some people do. My choice was to go back to school full-time.
Got it.
So obviously there's issues with working full-time and
Makes
going to
sense.
school
Okay.
full-time.
So your current post right now with Sandy Springs is what exactly?
I'm a narcotics detective.
Okay. And you've been with Sandy Springs since 2011.
Yes.
When did you join the K-9 unit?
In 2014.
And then until when?
2020. About approximately May of 2020.
And what precipitated that change?
My dog had health issues, so he was retiring. So I needed to find another unit in the department to go to.
Okay, so Django had health issues.
Now he does. Now that
Okay.
he's retired and a lot older.
Okay.
Yes.
And isn't it right that as a handler, that dog is only going to work with you as a handler, right? Not having multiple handlers?
It really is dependent on the dog. In our situation, it was myself and Django together. Other departments may have dogs that are handled by multiple people. It's really just how the department works.
Okay. What kind of health issues does Django have?
He had congestive heart failure.
How long has that been going on?
Maybe a year or so, year and a half. I'm not sure.
When was he diagnosed?
So anything about the health condition affect Django's ability to do his work, or is something that came up afterwards?
No, sir. He would still work today if I would let him.
Okay. All right, let's move to a different topic.
I will have other questions about Django, though, Your Honor.
Oh, well, you can ask about Django, but we don't need to learn more about his medical history.
I'll move on at this moment, Your Honor. So at the time of this arrest in July of 2018, you had already done a lot of K-9 and narcotics training,
Yes.
right? And then since then, you've done a lot more.
I've done more training, yes.
Yeah, and also narcotics training in particular.
Yes.
You've also done additional hours dealing with narcotics, drug cartels, executing search warrants, right? And also advanced report writing. Does that sound right? Some of the training you've done?
I believe I took advanced report writing before that, but yes, I've done, since that incident, I've taken more training in
Okay.
police.
Great. Are you often called out to assist in narcotics investigations involving informants?
Involving what?
Informants.
Oh.
Sure, it could be the mask, but are you,
She's doing her best, but if you move the microphone maybe up, no, it won't move.
yeah,
There we go.
okay. Are you often called out to investigations that deal with informants?
Yes.
And those investigations, are they usually led by a narcotics task force of some sort?
It depends on the situation. They're usually led by a narcotics unit
Okay.
or someone in the unit.
Or typically an investigator with significant narcotics training, right?
Yes.
And you said with investigator Witkowski was the lead on this.
Yes.
But as far as you know, he's not focused on narcotics work, is that right?
Detective Witkowski?
Yes.
No, he is assigned to the narcotics unit.
Okay, are you familiar with his training and experience?
Do I know his specific training and experience? No, I know he's been an officer for a number of years. He's been in the narcotics unit for a number of years.
Would it surprise you to know that, he's had less than 30 hours of training in narcotics?
What's the relevance of this officer's knowledge of Witkowski's background? I could see a jury might go ooh or ah when you ask that, but
Given the training that Detective Raynels has had in narcotics and his involvement in narcotics investigations, I think it's interesting to understand typically the involvement with narcotics investigations with officers that are trained in narcotics. How common that is.
Was Witkowski at the scene of the vehicle stop?
I don't recall if he was there or not.
Was he involved in any way with your interactions with Mr. Cabrera?
No.
Okay, then I don't see how it may be relevant in a different setting in this case, but for what we're deciding today, the narrow question of statement and what was seized, he could have had 30,000 or 30 hours, and it doesn't affect the interaction that Reynolds had with Cabrera.
What about Detective Cannon? He was there on the scene. He was the one that made the stop, correct?
Correct.
Okay. He's not specifically focused on narcotics work, at least at the time, July of 2018. Is that
He
correct?
works in crime suppression and the crime suppression unit, which is now the street crimes unit, but they do deal with narcotics. I don't know
Sure.
what his day-to-day is though.
But it is your testimony that typically when you're called out to investigations that have something to do with an informant, it's typically a narcotics unit of some sort.
Yes.
So on your vehicle, well, actually, let's talk about your person. No BWCs, no body worn cameras.
At that time,
Yes.
in Sandy Springs, we did not have them. At least the people in the special operations unit didn't. I know I didn't have one. Our patrol people may have had them. I don't know.
In your vehicle, who was with you?
So our vehicles are just one-man vehicles. So
Okay.
just myself and the dog is in the back.
Okay. So your testimony is that you were not issued a BWC at that point, body worn camera.
Correct.
And then what about an in-car recording device? Was your vehicle equipped with an in-car recording device?
I'm not sure because I may have had a new car at that point, or I may have an old one. So it may have had one working or may not have. I just don't know. I don't remember.
Are you familiar with the Sandy Springs procedure on in-car recording devices?
Yes.
And that was issued in 2012.
Sure. Yeah.
And so then you're familiar with the fact that it shall be activated and remain activated anytime there's emergency lights operated,
Yep.
or anytime that your vehicle is operated outside of a typical ordinary rules of the road. Isn't that right?
Correct.
But yours was not on.
Again, I don't recall if it was even functioning. It may have been in a spare car. May have been a regular car. I just don't know. I don't remember.
So if you did have a car that had a dash cam, what would we have gotten from that, assuming it was preserved and requested?
It would have been a video of just basically the car that we stopped because it's just a dash cam. Because at that time we didn't have the actual cameras on our chest.
So you didn't stop the vehicle. Any idea where you parked? I mean, you could have parked
I would have parked.
with the front of your car facing in the opposite direction. There's a gas station.
I could have. Typically, I would park, behind the offer to stop the car.
Okay.
But
So if you had a dash cam
it would.
and it was running, it would show footage of the stopped Lexus
Yeah.
and at least one, if not more, because we've got Canon and we've got Snow. So I don't know if they had separate cars. You would have been.
They were in separate cars. So if I had one, if it was working, it would have just shown basically the Lexus, like that scene in front of the car.
Okay. What about audio? Does the dash cam capture external audio or only what's going on inside your, like barking inside your car?
The dash cam captures the internal audio of the car, and then there's a microphone that goes on your lapel that would catch like conversation, but there wouldn't be an actual video.
Okay.
When were you issued a body worn camera?
Possibly 2019. I don't recall the exact date, or may have been 2020.
So even though there's been an existing procedure on body worn cameras for years prior to this 2018 incident, you were never issued one?
I think the policy you're speaking of is in regards to your dash cam. A dash cam and a body worn camera are separate things. So dash cams didn't start getting issued until body cams, maybe 2017. I don't recall the exact dates, but I know that I hadn't been issued one.
Would it help to refresh your recollection if you saw the policy?
So I want to make sure we aren't going down another rabbit hole we don't need to. Detective Reynolds has made clear he didn't have a body cam at the time. He hadn't been issued one until after that. So if that was a failing of Sandy Springs Police Department, there may be folks who need to come answer to that, but he didn't break into the supply closet and steal one that hadn't been authorized and assigned to him yet.
I understand, just in terms of the length of time that the city's been using it. But I can
Okay.
move on from that, Your Honor. It's not the most important. So with you being aware, Detective Reynolds, of this investigation beforehand, knowing that you're going to be called out to this investigation, you've gotten a vehicle that just didn't have a recording device?
It's my issued vehicle, ma'am. I don't know what to tell you. That was my issued car. That's what I've had.
So what did you do when you began your shift as it relates to what you're supposed to do to verify and check your recording device in your vehicle? What's the procedure? What are you supposed to do each day on your shift?
I start my car to come to work, ma'am. I don't go through a specific procedure to make sure, like that particular day, that camera was working. If I even had one, I don't know.
So you're not aware that the procedure for Sandy Springs requires you?
I'm sure there's a
Can you let me
procedure
finish?
to.
You got
to do
to
that.
let her finish her question before you give your answer.
Yes, sorry.
Does it sound right that there's a procedure that requires you each day on your shift to make sure that your equipment is functioning properly and making sure that it's working?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance, it's not at the time when this incident took place. I think she's talking about it from in the future now. It's not relevant to the stop and what he had at the time.
Overruled.
I'm sure there's a procedure. Yes.
Okay. And so that's just not something that you follow in terms of procedure?
I follow procedure, ma'am. That particular, I don't know if there was a dash cam or not. I have no idea. I don't recall.
If you had followed procedure, you would have identified that maybe it wasn't working in your vehicle that day. Isn't that right?
So you know the factual findings I'm going to make. This witness has now said maybe 5 times he doesn't remember if there was one in the vehicle or not. So if there wasn't one, there was nothing for him to check. If there was one, you can ask him that, but he hasn't committed to there being a dash cam in the vehicle he had. So you're free to ask him. I'll call it a hypothetical, but it's not a prohibited hypothetical. Had there been a dash cam, did you do X or Y or Z? And you can do that. But this witness has not said, yes, there was a dash cam and I put tape over it, or I made sure it wasn't working, or I turned it on and I don't know where the recording went.
You've had hundreds of hours of training in narcotics investigations, right?
Yes.
And any sort of investigation that deals with an informant or some sort of operation ahead of time, that's an important incident to get right. Would you say that's correct?
Yes.
Okay, but that day when you knew you were going to be called out to this investigation, you did not make sure that you were in a vehicle that had a recording device to make sure that the court could be aware of actually what took place that day.
Ma'am,
Correct?
I don't recall whether I checked a dash cam or if I didn't that day. I don't recall.
Well, if you would have checked, you would have been able to make sure you had one.
Ask the answer, Your Honor.
I think
Move on.
we've pinned this down as much as we can pin it down.
What about Django's training history? Do you have those records with you today?
No.
Right. Django's a German Shepherd, right?
No, he's a Belgian Malinois.
Oh, does that look like a German Shepherd?
So yeah, basically they look like German Shepherd. They're a little smaller, skinnier, pointier ears.
Okay. And when did you first start with Django specifically?
2014.
Okay, so when you became a handler, you immediately started with Django.
That's correct. Yes.
And when did Django complete his training?
Sorry, 1 second. It's going to take me a minute to recall. It would have been around November of 2014.
That's when his was completed.
His school, yes.
Okay. And is that when he also gets his certification?
Well, they get certified every year in drug detection, but yes, he did get certification when he finished school as well.
Can you recall when he was last certified?
So this stop occurred in July of 2018. I don't have the exact date. It would have been the the November to December of the prior year, 2017. So approximately 7 to 8 months before the stop.
Okay, and you don't have the records to verify that, that's just from memory?
Not with me today. I don't have the records with me.
And are those activities documented in it's like a RMS module or something like that?
The certifications
Yes.
are done through the NNDDA, which is the National Drug Detection Association. Detector Dog Association. So they have records of it, and also as a handler, you do basically a training record for when they're certified. Yeah.
So that training record, that's the module that I'm referring to. Who keeps that module?
So again, at this time in 2018, I don't believe that we had a K9 module. So basically, they were just done on Word documents that the handler does on their own.
So that's the log that you're referring to, the training
Yeah,
log? Okay,
yeah.
so how is that maintained?
The handler does it on their own.
So you have those records?
Yes.
No, it's not maintained by Sandy Springs?
As far as saved at Sandy Springs,
Yeah.
at this time,
Uh-huh.
I don't believe so. We didn't have the K9 module that we have now. That came along maybe after this stop the next year, maybe.
Okay, so that's just like on your home computer, or I'm just wondering where those records are?
They're at my house.
Okay. So prior to July of 2018, what was the extent of his training?
So they go through the 2-month training that he went to in 2014, and then every week they go through 8 hours of training every week after that.
And that training involves specifically being able to detect certain odors, right?
Yes.
And so they have specific training related to how to detect the odor of marijuana.
Well, the training is for the detective of various drugs: marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and ecstasy.
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
Do they do a different alert depending on the drug, where they basically say, this is one of the things that I've been taught to smell, and then you get to figure out what it is?
Correct. So the alert is just for the odor of one of the drugs that they're trained and certified to detect. The alert isn't different for each drug.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
The alert is not different for each drug. It's the same alert.
So your testimony is that a canine trained in drug investigations alerts the same regardless of whether it's cocaine versus marijuana.
That's correct.
They're not trained differently for different substances.
That's correct.
Okay. So how was Django trained to alert to a controlled substance?
So an alert is basically a spontaneous movement by the dog when he encounters a controlled substance that he's trained and certified to detect. So they alert, and then once he thinks he's at the source of an odor, he will sit and stare at a car or stare at the object, whatever it is.
Until what happens?
That's his alert and indication, is to sit and stare,
Mhm.
typically.
And that would be a passive alert, right?
Yes.
What's an aggressive alert?
That would be scratching.
Okay.
Typically, some dogs might bite.
So again, I'm not the jury. I just want to make sure we're getting to where I don't know, maybe this is going to tie together, whether it was a passive or an active alert. He alerted. Where,
Yes, in terms of if this search is going to hinge at all on what the dog did or didn't do, exploring and whether or not the activity of the dog and the training of the dog is reliable will be part of your honor's consideration. And so
okay,
I'm just trying to establish what that would be.
okay.
I'll try to move through it, your honor, but this is an important scenario for Mr. Cabrera.
No, I don't want you to, I just want to make sure we're getting to things most relevant to the suppression piece,
Sure.
as opposed to
Just learning about
Yeah,
dogs. Sure, I
how the
understand.
dogs alert.
Yes, understood. So the types of aggressive alerts, you said scratching or biting potentially.
Typically, yeah.
Okay. Any other types of alerts that Django was trained to do?
Sometimes they will lay down and stare at a car or stare at the object.
And what would the difference be from sitting down to laying down?
It may be it really is dependent. It may be the level of where the odor is. He may lay down if it's lower. If it's higher, he may sit. If it's really high, he may just get on his back paws and pirouette. I've seen him do that before. There's various things that they do. I've seen him do multiple times when he's in drug odor that I can recognize.
And rewards are used, right?
Rewards.
Yes.
So dogs are trained differently.
Relevance?
So we're sort of still in this same area.
I can ask it more specifically, Your Honor.
Okay. Then again, we're getting to, was it appropriate for this officer to go in your client's jacket and pull out the thing that was the size of a baseball? So whether the dog pirouettes or sits or lies down,
It goes to reliability.
okay. But are you going to call a witness who is going to, I guess you don't need to call a witness. This seems
It's the
more.
state's burden to prove this, but you know.
It is, but give me your theory as to why it wasn't reliable.
Well, I have to be able to understand what the circumstances were with Django. You know, it's all in a bubble otherwise. So I'm just trying to understand what Django was trained to do in his typical training and what actually happened.
Okay.
At the time, just like we would for an officer. You know, when an officer is on the stand, I have the opportunity to ask about his training and experience and what he knows, and the state does the same.
No, I don't object to that because the inquiry in question is whether or not the officer's conduct was lawful and stopped. If he testified that an indication occurred.
But the officer said one of the bases for being suspicious about Mr. Cabrera was that his dog alerted on the car. So I'm not disagreeing with Ms. Stern's exploration. It seems to me to be a little circuitous, that's all.
After Django alerted by sitting down, how did he get up? Did you give him a reward to get up?
No.
Okay. Isn't that something that's part of your training, is to use rewards in order to indicate to the dog when they've done something?
So typically, for our specific department and the way we train our dogs, not gonna, as far as reward, you mean like a toy or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of rewards are
Okay, yeah,
used.
we don't do that in the street. It's just, we say good job and we put him back in the car.
So how does Django know to get up?
I walked off and told him to come with me.
Okay. Have you had challenges with Django? I guess let's just talk about, up to the point of July. Well, really in general, have you had challenges with him in terms of being able to perform?
No.
Okay. Can you verify what his success rate is?
I can't give you the exact number right now, but it's
Sure.
approximately 92% is what he finished his career with.
Okay. So in that other 8%, what is happening?
They were they weren't able to be verified as good alerts, meaning I searched, say, a car and didn't find anything.
Would this case have qualified as a success?
Yes.
Nothing was found in the car, but something was found in the pocket of the guy who was sitting where Django alerted.
That's correct.
And the fact that you or Snow smelled marijuana doesn't mean that Django was alerting the marijuana. You don't know because he only has one signal. He could have been saying, wow, there's cocaine and marijuana here. He has trouble communicating in that way.
Yes.
Okay. But just so I'm following, if you had searched the car as you did and found nothing and ended up not searching Mr. Cabrera, or he didn't have anything on him, that would be part of the 8%. There was an alert, but you guys couldn't find something.
No, the way I would count that is basically you had an alert, but it was substantiated through an interview, meaning this case, the defendant said, yeah, I was smoking marijuana earlier, which was explained.
Okay, that's it. Okay. But if he alerted and no one admitted to anything and you didn't find, okay.
We don't know why the dog alerted.
Got it.
Through training, how long typically does a piece of property need to have some sort of contamination from a substance for it to have a strong enough odor for the dog to detect?
Well, that just depends on the size, the volume of whatever it is, say cocaine, and how long it's in the car or in the container or whatever it was in.
But in terms of training, I'm sure you test out different
So
scenarios.
we do
right?
different scenarios. Sometimes we might we call it cook time, basically.
Oh, what?
Cook time,
Okay.
as far as say you hide drugs in this drawer. Maybe you let it sit there for 5 minutes, or maybe you let it sit there for 2 hours.
Mhm.
You do different things in training.
Mhm. And what's the typical average time that it would cook long enough for the dog to detect it?
It depends on how much you hide in there.
What's the average though, from what you?
I don't know the average, ma'am.
What's the most typical scenario?
We do all different scenarios, ma'am. I don't know.
I mean, you've participated in hundreds of hours of canine training, right?
But what's a typical scenario? Is it a big car? Is it a lot of drugs? Is it in the trunk? Is it wrapped with foil and axle grease? Is it cold out? Is it hot out?
No, the question is,
Mhm.
what's the average amount of time that a substance needs to be in contact with a piece of property in order for it to cook long enough for there to be an odor?
Ask the answer, Your Honor, objection to that. He said that it varies.
That's what an average is. It varies, right? I'm not asking for a specific amount of time. I'm asking for an average. What's the typical average amount of time?
Is that a meaningful number?
Maybe I'm not understanding correctly. I don't know. When we do training in K9, you change it every week so that no scenario is the same. So, 1 week you do 5 minutes, the next week you might do 30 minutes, the next week you might do an hour. It's constantly changing to train the dogs to work well in the field. So it's not like an average of, okay, it's 10 minutes. I can't testify that. I don't know.
So in the training, was there a scenario where marijuana was placed in a drawer
Sure.
for 1 minute?
Mhm.
And in that 1 minute that the marijuana was in the drawer, was the dog able to detect the fact that for 1 minute it was there?
I can tell you right now that if you put marijuana in a drawer for a minute, the dog will probably alert to it
Okay.
because it's I'm sure everyone smelled marijuana. It smells.
Mhm.
It's easy for them to smell.
But you didn't actually find any marijuana at all on Mr. Cabrera, is that right?
No.
Okay. It was raining. Do you remember that day?
It was at least overcast, possibly drizzling.
Okay. Have you seen different things happen in different weather conditions in terms of dogs alert?
Yes.
Okay. What happens in a rain scenario?
In a rain scenario, the dogs still work well in the rain. We've done training in the rain. I've deployed my dog obviously in the rain before, and they work well. And
Sometimes affects the effectiveness.
I don't believe so.
And so since it was raining, I just want to mention your prior testimony in terms of noticing that Mr. Cabrera rolled his window up. So you recall that Mr. Cabrera had his window down while it was raining?
Yes.
Okay. And you found that it was odd that he rolled his window up while it was raining?
I found it odd. They rolled it up when we were having that specific conversation
What was that conversation?
with Detective Snow about how he smelled marijuana coming from the car.
Okay. So how long was Mr. Cabrera, let me ask that differently. You came to the vehicle. Do you know how long Mr. Cabrera had been sitting there by the time you came?
No.
Okay. And so Detective Cannon had Mr. Cabrera stay in the vehicle until you arrived?
Yes, I believe he was sitting in the car when I arrived. Yeah.
Okay. So did you see Detective Cannon physically open the door?
I don't recall that.
Okay. So you were there when Mr. Cabrera was still sitting in the vehicle.
Yes.
And you recall that he rolled up his window. So it seems
Uh-huh.
like that's an important detail that you want to remember, right?
Right.
But you don't recall that Detective Cannon physically opened the car door and told Jose to get out?
No, I don't.
just going back to Django's actual alert for a moment, you mentioned that you put him inside of the vehicle.
Yes.
What does that mean? You physically put him up on the seat?
No, I opened the door
Uh-huh.
and let him in.
Okay. And so he jumps up on the seat?
Yes. Yes.
So at this point, you had already opened up the door of the vehicle. It wasn't open already?
It was closed when I did the sniff, and then subsequent to him alerting to the outside of the car, I opened the rear passenger seat and put him inside.
And this was after the driver of the Lexus gave consent to search the car.
Can I refer to my report, sir?
If that will help.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So the conversation where she consented to a search of the vehicle would have been after I had put the dog inside.
Okay, so it was after the 2 alerts
Yes.
that the driver was approached for consent for humans to search the car. But
Yes, just in speaking to her, I know I didn't need consent, but just talking to the driver.
okay,
Yes.
but it wasn't, hey, is it okay if I let my dog in the car?
No.
It was, there's whatever you said, and the driver said, yep, you can go ahead. Humans can now search the car.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At what point of your guiding Django around the vehicle was the driver and the passenger still in the vehicle?
I mean, you're speaking of how long it was before I put the dog on the car?
Yeah, let me just ask that. It was a bad
Yeah.
question.
All right.
Did you do an external search or an external sniff with Django while the driver and passenger were still in the vehicle?
No.
Okay, so you didn't really have Django start to do anything until Jose was removed from the vehicle and the driver was also out of the vehicle.
That's correct.
And again, you don't remember how Jose left the vehicle.
No.
Because according to canine protocol, as you said, it would not be proper for there to be any sort of use of a canine while there's still humans inside of property.
Yeah, that's typically not what we're going to do because, as I said earlier, there's obvious issues with that, so we have them exit the car.
Okay. So after Django sits down, well, actually, he sits down where?
On the right side of the vehicle, in the area of the rear passenger seat.
So now,
Or, excuse me,
so he jumped into the vehicle, right?
after I opened it, yeah.
Right. You open the door, he jumps into the
Yeah.
vehicle. He scratches at the seat.
Yes.
And then does he jump out on his own or do you get him to come out? How does that work?
I just tell him to come with me, and he came.
Okay. And then how does he?
I just put him back in my patrol car.
Okay. So at what point is he sitting?
So maybe I haven't explained this correctly. So the driver and the defender are outside the vehicle. All the doors are close to the car. I do an exterior sniff of the car. K9 Django sits and alerts to the right rear passenger seat for the odor of a controlled substance certified to detect. I then open the car and put him in the car, and he again alerts to the seat where the defendant is sitting, and then I just tell him to come with me, the dog, and put him back in my patrol car.
Okay. So the sitting was before he entered the vehicle.
Yes.
Okay.
Was it a different, you said something about scratching. It sounds like it was a different form of alert inside the car than it was outside the car.
Sometimes dogs, in particular my dog, when they alert, they may also scratch as well instead of sitting. In this case, he's inside a car, so he can't really sit. Sometimes it's very awkward. He's a big dog to lay down, right, or anything like that. So he might just scratch, or you've seen him bite before too. So he scratched this particular time.
Scratches in the poor Lexus driver was sad that there was no more rear seat.
It was, he didn't damage it.
Okay.
So because you were aware of this investigation going on beforehand, you were aware that there was a traffic stop initiated soon after Mr. Cabrera got in this blue Lexus, right?
Mhm.
Are you aware
You need to
of,
say yes or no,
I'm
just
sorry.
so the court reporter, I promise you through the mask, she cannot hear.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Yes, that's correct.
are you aware of the distance between where Mr. Cabrera got in the vehicle and where the traffic stop took place?
It was all within the city of Sandy Springs.
Sure.
So I don't know at what point he got in the car.
Are you aware of the location where the car was traveling from?
It was a close location, I believe.
Okay, so if I said it was a 4-minute drive, would that sound accurate?
It's probably close.
Okay. So then with Mr. Cabrera in the back passenger seat for 4 minutes
Mhm.
and no marijuana being found, you find that to be a success that Django alerted to where he was sitting?
Yes.
In your experience, if there's cocaine wrapped in plastic inside of a jacket
Mhm.
that never touched the seat of the car, that wouldn't provide an odor on the seat of the car, right?
I don't,
Really?
he had a jacket on. I don't know if it was touching the seat or not. 86 grams of cocaine is a large amount of cocaine and gives off a large amount of odor. So I would expect the odor to transfer into the clothing, into cloth, things like that. Depending, again, the volume is 86 grams is a lot of cocaine, so it's going to have a lot of odor. comes
But
with
your report indicates that it was in his jacket pocket,
Mhm.
right? Not in his pants pocket.
Mhm.
So he wasn't
I'm
sitting
sorry. Correct.
on it. So it's your testimony that an amount of cocaine wrapped and sealed in plastic would have transmitted an odor to the seat of a car where a person was sitting for 4 minutes?
Well, ma'am, it must have because the dog alerted.
All right. So after the sniff and search by Django, then you go over to Mr. Cabrera. Who is Mr. Cabrera standing with at that point?
I don't recall who he was standing with.
Okay. Was Detective Cannon over there?
He may have been. I don't know.
He certainly wasn't by himself, right?
No,
Okay. Do you remember how many officers were there with him?
no, I don't.
So you go over to where Mr. Cabrera is and you say what?
I don't recall specifically what I said to him.
Mr. Cabrera's in handcuffs?
I don't believe he was, but I can't recall specifically.
Did he have his hands behind his back?
I don't think he was handcuffed.
Okay.
I don't remember specifically if he was or not.
So when you go over there and you start talking to him, do you tell him at that point that he has the right to remain silent and that everything that he says is going to be used against him?
I did not Mirandize him.
Do you know if he had been Mirandized prior to you starting to talk to him?
I do not.
Just to be clear, you're not sure or he was not?
I don't know if he was or not.
Okay. But you do ask him to for consent to search and he says no.
Yes, he declined.
But you go into his pockets and retrieve the bag of cocaine anyway.
Yes.
Okay. Because at that point, you have probable cause that he's possessing marijuana?
I would probable cause to believe that he's possessed some sort of controlled substance.
Okay. And then at that point, that would be based on Django's alert only?
It would be based off, I was told the odor of marijuana is coming from the vehicle. The dog alerted to the vehicle as well as where the defendant was sitting. And then also his admission that he had been smoking marijuana earlier in the day.
Let's talk about the smell for a minute. The state asked you who else was around. You guys are at a gas station, right?
Yes.
Middle of the day.
Mhm.
It's raining. You're standing under some sort of coverage, is that
Oh,
right?
yes.
Okay, so there are people coming in and out at the gas station.
I would suspect so, yes.
And at that point, you didn't have any indication that Mr. Cabrera was armed, right?
No.
There was no evidence of that.
No.
And in your report, you don't mention anything about a Terry pat down.
No, it's not in there.
Okay. And you've been trained on advanced report writing.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that be an important part of your search?
It would be.
Also, given the amount of narcotics training that you've had, leafy green marijuana feels very different from a gun, right?
From what?
A gun
Yes.
also feels very different from a hard bag of cocaine.
A gun versus cocaine.
Sorry, a bag of leafy green marijuana.
It depends. Sometimes it does. I've seen marijuana that is vacuum sealed and it's very hard.
Okay. So in terms of this bulge that you
Correct.
talked about, you said to the state it could have been a gun, could have been a controlled substance, right? But there's also a lot of other things that a person could be carrying in their jacket pocket. Isn't that fair?
For the typical person, I believe so. In this instance, I don't think so because of the other factors that I knew before, which was the alert from the dog for the odor of a controlled substance. Detective Snow telling me that he could smell marijuana coming from this person. I could smell marijuana coming from him as well, which led me to believe that it was a controlled substance that he was trying to hide, basically.
But also him saying that he smoked marijuana earlier in the day would be a reasonable explanation why there still may be an odor of marijuana, right?
Yes.
Until you reached into Jose's jacket pocket, there was no direct knowledge of what was in there, right?
Direct knowledge.
Mhm.
Um,
You didn't directly know that he had drugs on him.
well, we knew there was through a confidential source of the operation. I specifically know that he had.
But that's not something you observed, right? You didn't observe the hand-to-hand transaction or know specifically that the transaction actually took place.
No.
Okay. So you did not have any direct knowledge of what was in Jose's pocket before you reached in and took it out.
As far as seeing some sort of transaction.
No, just as far as knowing that there was in fact a controlled substance. You had a suspicion, right? But you had no direct knowledge that there was controlled substance in his pocket.
I'll agree with that. Yes.
So then after you retrieved the cocaine from Jose's pocket, you took it into your possession?
Yes.
Okay. So then if investigator Wachowski reports that Detective Cannon took it, that's not accurate?
Yeah, it's an error in the report.
Okay. Is that typical that as the canine officer, if you retrieve controlled substances, you then take chain of custody over it?
It really is dependent on what occurs. In this particular instance, I took possession of the drugs and took it to headquarters. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we do. In this instance, I did.
All right. And then who took it from there?
The drugs?
Yes.
It was given to Detective Wachowski and put into the evidence lockers.
Okay. Did you have any involvement with any other evidence from Mr. Cabrera?
I don't believe so.
Did you seize like cell phones from him, or that was a different officer?
I know cell phones were taken. I didn't take them.
Okay. Do you know, so the cell phones that were taken, that was a black Apple iPhone and a black LG flip phone?
Relevance? The two phones taken, how is that relevant to the stop or whether or not it was legal to?
Let me let her finish asking the question. I think we're establishing that whatever happened with him, Reynolds had nothing to do with that.
Well, sure.
You can finish your question.
So as a result of this stop and a result of him being arrested, there was evidence seized, right?
Right.
One piece of that evidence was cocaine,
Yes.
right? And you're aware that there were also 2 cell phones seized as a result of his arrest?
Yes, I saw it on the property sheet.
Okay.
But you didn't, you took the drugs. That's all you were, if
Correct.
we were to follow the chain of custody, your name is on it for the drugs, not for the cell phones.
Correct.
Okay.
But being aware of other aspects of this investigation, are you aware of whether those phones produced any evidence related to this investigation?
What is the relevance of that?
It's evidence as a result of this stop and search. And I think this may be the only officer that's testifying Your Honor, and so just to understand,
So the phones are not coming in if the drugs are not coming in. If the pat down, which would be, I'm gonna ask a few questions when you're done, but assuming there was an issue with either the stop or the search, then the phones are protected. They wouldn't be part of it. But I don't know whether he knows that they had a video of your client packing the cocaine into the, it's all tainted if there was a problem with what we're talking about now.
the one aspect is the potential taint, but also potential Brady concerns, and the state doesn't seem to be aware of any of this evidence. The only other witness that may have knowledge of whether there is other evidence that we don't have access to.
So have you asked for the contents of your client's cell phones?
Yes.
And you haven't gotten that?
Correct.
Okay, well, we'll address that. He doesn't need to address that.
Okay. Just a little bit more, Your Honor. Looking at the involvement for all the different officers, there's a few different reports. There's also different times on different reports. So I just need your help in understanding the accuracy of what took place and when. So Officer Witkowski's report says that Mr. Cabrera was picked up from his home by the silver Kia Optima around 1631. And then ultimately at 1825, the drugs positively scanned for cocaine. Your report indicates your involvement and call out time at 1324 and a clear time at 1341. But the incident time says 1721. So I'm just trying to understand, do you think that that's accurate, that there would be a 5-hour gap in time between when Witkowski's report indicates you guys were out there in your report?
I don't know.
Okay. Does it seem accurate that you would have been out there at 1324?
Objection. Is this about the Lexus or the other vehicle?
I'm just
So it's
talking
not
about,
an objection, you've got a question. So you'll be able to follow up with this witness?
I guess I just say relevance is my objection because this officer has indicated many times he has no other information about the other vehicle but just the Lexus.
So I want to make sure I understand, Ms. Stern. What you're saying is that Detective Reynolds' report suggests that 1:30 in the afternoon, he's called out. Witkowski's report say everything happened several hours after that?
yes. And I can ask some better questions as well.
Your questions are fine. I wasn't following. The numbers weren't matching, but I don't know that the numbers were necessarily describing the same thing.
Sure. So would you say that typically when trying to understand an accurate time period that the CAD report is pretty reliable?
You're talking about the CAD report from like Chatcom, you mean?
Yeah.
It depends. Like some of these operations go on for longer periods of time and there's other factors involved.
But that's a log though, right? It's not based on a memory.
It
of when
is a
the officer-
log, but it's not a log as in someone calls 911 and everyone's getting dispatched to the call.
Sure.
We're just sitting on this call so that people know where we're at.
Okay. So if the CAD report says that the call was received
It's,
at 1352, does that mean that that's when it was called in? Like the traffic stop was called in? Is that what that typically references?
probably yes.
Okay. And then so your report indicates that you were there at 1324, which would have been before they called in the stop. Can you explain how that would be?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Is it common that an officer would wait for a while before calling it in?
As far as the traffic stop?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So when a CAD report says last clear, does that typically mean that the stop was over?
It's going to depend. Like, I don't know what the CAD report is that you're looking at.
Sure. Well, I can,
Okay.
I can show it to you. Would that help you?
Yeah,
Fresh?
that might help me.
Oh, okay.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm approaching what your remark said. Is it a D1 or?
Thank you.
Looking at just kind of generic terms really is what I'm asking about right now. When it says call received on a CAD report, that typically means that's when the traffic stop was called in.
Yes.
And then typically last clear, does that typically mean when it ends? Because that's the last time on there.
Yeah, that's the way it looks on here. Yes.
Okay. And where it indicates Jose Cabrera's name, in your
On the second
experience?
page, you mean?
Yes, on the second page. Is that typically when a suspect is in custody, someone's detained, and they call in to dispatch that they have a person in custody after arrest?
Ma'am, I don't know. I mean, they could have just run them on the radio when they had them stopped. I don't know. I didn't do it.
Sure. And just talking
I
about
don't know.
generally, so there's times where a name would be called in prior to when they actually detain the person.
Sure. Like if you do a traffic stop and you're talking to them, you may conduct a check on them while you're talking to them.
Okay. It does appear that there was about an hour between when they have Jose's name there and then the last clear. Do you have an idea of what would be happening within that time period?
You're talking about 1409,
Yes.
and then where was the other hour at?
And then 1509 seems to be exactly 1 hour later.
I don't see the 1509, ma'am. Am I
Okay.
missing it? Can you?
May I refer back to that actually? Sorry, that was my last possible.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's-
So 1409 is right here. Which is last clear. Typically, what's
Yeah. that
what's
is-
happening before a last clear?
I don't know if that was happening here, but I could guess that he was probably getting transported to headquarters and paperwork was being done.
Okay, and I don't want you to guess. Yeah, I don't want you to guess. Really what I'm asking is generally, when we see last clear, or the terminology that's being used on
Yeah.
these reports,
Objection relevance, Your Honor?
What is the relevance?
I'm trying to establish the time period that they were out there.
Okay, but tell me how that is relevant to what you're asking me to do, which is to suppress what was seized from your client.
Sure. Each level of stop, each tier of a stop, Your Honor, has a specific purpose. And, there's certain things that are permissible and not permissible. There's a certain scope for each level of the stop. And so just trying to establish the amount of time that they were out there and what was going on at each point for Your Honor's consideration of whether it was permissible.
Okay, well, if you want to try to directly tie it to the testimony, that's fine. It seems like once the dog alerted, time can slow way down. And my familiarity with the case law is maybe we focus on how long did it take for Detective Reynolds and Django to get there, because there may have been less of a basis. It's tint violation, but I'll follow you on this. But right now you were just saying, gosh, it looks like people were involved in this case for a while, but you need to anchor it to specific things.
First, I'm just trying to establish what these titles are referring to so that we can make some sort of observation from it, Your Honor.
Okay.
So typically when we see a last clear, does that indicate that the stop is over and everything is wrapped up?
It may, but in a lot of these cases, they go on for several hours because by the time you get to headquarters and you process evidence, et cetera, it can be several hours down the road. So you're gonna have people clearing these locations. When their role is done, they're gonna be clearing and leaving the scene basically. But there's still gonna be people at headquarters processing evidence and doing the complaint room, stuff like that.
Yes,
So
but this is a dispatch report, right? So this is just involving when dispatch is
right.
part of it. So if dispatch is reporting last clear, is that when dispatch is no longer involved because it's wrapped up with them?
It depends. So I can tell you now I'm a narcotics detective, right? So say this happened and I go up at headquarters, may not clear this call for another 6 hours. So I would be the last cleared as far as the CAD, but, in this case, that may not have happened. I don't know.
Okay.
So the last clear could come from the scene, it could come from headquarters.
Correct.
It really would be whoever did the last clear having a specific recollection of what was going on then.
Correct. It'd be whoever was doing this would know. I don't know, ma'am.
Okay. You can see on the CAD logs there that the incident began around 1352.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
But you began at 1324.
Correct. That's what my report
Do
says.
you think that's just an error in your report?
It must be. I don't know. Obviously, the times are different.
Yeah, because you weren't there
do you mean?
immediately, right?
Traffic stop?
Mhm.
I was there very quickly.
But you were not there waiting prior to when the traffic stop took place, right?
At the Chevron?
Yes.
No.
So it would have been at some point after the traffic stop initiated.
That I got there, yes.
Yes. Okay. So if the call-in time doesn't necessarily reflect when the traffic stop actually began, then we don't really have a true way to verify exactly how long the traffic stop and overall search took place, right?
Well, so when these happen, the detective Cannon or Snow would have called out on the radio
Mhm.
that they're doing a traffic stop and would have been logged in the Chatcom system.
Is that the call-in time? That's the 152 or 1352?
So I'm not seeing on this. I'm not seeing Detective Cannon or Detective Snow's call sign. So I don't know if this is right or not. Because this is for Detective Witkowski. And Detective Cannon or Detective Snow would have called out on a traffic stop when they're doing it, which would have been logged.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So you also have the other officers' reports in front of you right there. Can you verify what time
Sure.
Officer Witkowski's report indicates the time of the incident was?
So it would have been in Detective Witkowski's narrative.
Yes.
It says 1,700 hours, a little bit after.
Which is like 5 hours different from when you got there. Right?
Correct. I think there was an error. He made an error in the time. He wrote it down wrong.
So it seems like he has an error in the time. Seems like there may also be an error in your report because yours says you got there prior to when the CAD dispatch time.
But it sounds like this CAD dispatch isn't the right CAD dispatch, which gets back, I understand it's the only one you were given, but if it doesn't have Snow or Cannon on it, then I don't know who's calling out, but they may not be calling out the incident that we're here to talk about.
Well, Your Honor, that's just a choice of the state in terms of which witness they want to put up. But this is Investigator Witkowski's investigation. He was present when this was taking place.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm observing that your struggles in getting a CAD report seem to have been particularly frustrating because this doesn't seem like it's the right CAD report. If it doesn't have Snow or Cannon on it, then the call start time, whatever term you guys were using, it's someone else's call start time. Can you tell who it was?
I don't think we know, Your Honor, that Officer Witkowski's report is not accurate or that his CAD call in. I mean, he's operating this.
Well, I guess we don't know. That's my point. The way it sounds like it, from what I've gathered from Detective Reynolds' testimony, is that the officer or officers executing the stop call it in. I'm pulling over a blue Lexus, Georgia tag 1234. that starts the CAD, and it keeps going until that officer says, all clear. And what I heard Reynolds say is there's neither Cannon nor Snow who made that initial call saying we're pulling something over. So I'm not saying the CAD's wrong, but it helps me understand why maybe Reynolds' report and the CAD aren't quite aligned. I don't understand what's going on with Witkowski's report, but it's almost a different day.
Where was Investigator Witkowski during this stop?
I don't know.
You didn't see him on scene?
No, he wasn't there.
You
That I
definitely-
recall.
I'm sorry?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay, so you don't believe he was on scene?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure though.
Okay. So in terms of the timing of when you were there, when this started, we can't verify from the reports.
From the CAD history, I don't think you can.
Or even from your report in comparison to Witkowski's report, right? Because there's a 5-hour difference.
Yes,
Objection or relevance?
Well, I think it's relevant. I don't know that we should assume that Reynolds' report is wrong. That might be the right time. It could be Witkowski's is the right time, but we just don't know which one it is.
Right, which is my question, just in terms of not being able to verify exactly when this occurred or how long the traffic stop took place, right?
Well, you haven't asked this witness how long it took place. You have focused on the documents, which you've demonstrated may not be the right documents for us to be talking about. But it would be great, since this is the witness on the stand, to ask this witness his recollection of how long he was there and how long things took.
Well, so this incident 1.5 years ago, do you remember what time you got there?
It was 3 years ago.
Oh yes, sorry. Feels like that.
Do I recall a specific time?
Yes.
No, I can tell you that I was just a block or two away from the final stop location of the Chevron.
Okay. So in terms of independent memory of it, it's fair to say it's not possible to remember exactly the time frames after 3 years.
The exact time frame, no, but I can tell you I was within 2 blocks of the final stop location.
Okay. And do you know how long the officers were there before you got there?
No.
Do you know how long they stayed there after you left?
After Mr. Cabrera was in custody, you mean?
After you left with the drugs?
No.
Okay.
Did you have Mr. Cabrera with you also? He can't ride in your car with Django.
No, Judge. He was in Detective Cannon's car.
Okay. Drugs were with you and Cabrera was with Cannon.
And you testified earlier that you don't remember exactly how Cabrera was removed from the car.
No.
So you're not sure how long he had been waiting for you and the dog search, right?
No, I don't have an exact time, no.
Okay. No further questions. Actually, I'm sorry. I promise I'm almost done. I just needed one quick further accounting of who was there. So Witkowski was not there.
As far as I know.
Okay. Detective Cannon and Snow rode together?
They're in separate cars, but in the same unit.
Okay. And what unit is that?
They call it the Street Crimes Unit.
Okay. Not a narcotics unit.
They're a specialized unit that focuses on street level narcotics as well as enforcement of other crimes.
Is there also a narcotics unit within Sandy Springs?
Yes.
Okay. Is he the officer who, I'm sorry, is Detective Cannon the officer who arrested Cabrera?
Handcuffed him, you mean?
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay, you're not sure who did that?
No.
Was it you?
No, I don't believe I handcuffed him.
Okay. There's a CJ Muhlenbrock.
Yes, Muhlenbrock, yes.
Okay. And he's listed as the arresting officer on one of the reports. Was he there?
He was a part of the narcotics unit at the time.
Okay, was he there?
I don't know if he was on the scene or not. I don't know.
Okay. Did you see him there?
I don't recall.
Okay. Officer DeWald was there as well. Was he participating at all, or he was just observing?
DeWald?
Yes.
I'm sure that he was helping me. We worked together.
Okay. Helping you in what way?
probably searching the car.
Okay. Who, was anybody else there besides Detective Cannon, Detective Snow, you, DeWald, anyone else?
Not that I know of. Again, I was doing stuff, so wasn't like watching for people, other officers.
Okay. Okay, no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Can I have
You're
the
welcome.
spelling of
I
Officer
need to do a quick-
Muhlenbrock, please? The spelling
You
of
just don't
officer.
have that one memorized?
I've got it here.
Here it comes.
Sorry, 1 second.
It's M as in Mary, U, E, H, E, E as in elephant, N as in Nancy, B as in boy, R as in Richard, O as in octopus, C as in Charlie, K as in kilo.
Thank you.
Did you get that?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you for asking. I want to do a quick time check. Are you going to have redirect?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Do you have any other witnesses you're going to call?
As of right now, we would just wait until whatever comes out and redirect, and we would be able to tell you. We think not, but that may change.
Okay. And then Ms. Stern, you said you have a witness.
Yeah.
Okay. Ballpark, is it a 5-minute or an hour or?
It should be 20 minutes.
Okay. All right. Give me 1 second.
Judge, I'm gonna send you a message in chat.
Okay. Sure.
Do you mind just leaving it for, is that question? Oh, great. It's okay.
Okay. You're stuck. When the state is, oh, hold on 1 sec. You good? Okay. Oh, and I need to, hold on 1 second. I got a message. Okay. When you're ready.
Yes. Officer, I would like, I want to talk about the CAD report real quickly. Is there a prime unit identified on this CAD report that's identified with the officer?
A what? A prime?
Unit,
Oh,
The
prime unit.
Primary unit.
primary unit, yeah, on the top.
At the very top.
Yes.
Yes.
It says John Witkowski.
Is there a number identified next to his name?
Yes, it's Victor 67.
What is that?
It says basically in the narcotics unit, you have like a call sign or a number assigned to you. That's his number.
Is that your number?
No.
It's Officer Witkowski's number?
Yes.
And so when you look at the radio log that the defense mentioned about 1509 and 1352, do you see there a unit number associated with the radio log?
Yes, it's Victor 67.
So if this is a CAD of only the things that Officer Witkowski called in, is that correct?
That would what I would.
It's a speculation.
Well, I don't, based on your understanding of how CAD reports work and the attribution of Victor 67, what does that tell you?
I believe it is. I don't look a lot of CAD reports, but I think that's what this is saying.
Who does look at CAD reports besides attorneys? Okay.
But I guess if it was you that radioed in, it would have your unit number on there, right?
That would be my understanding of how this works,
Okay,
yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Also, I wanted to ask you, now you said you were waiting within 2 blocks of where the traffic stop occurred. When you got to the scene, had the issue of the window tint violation already been resolved?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so was Officer Cannon still in the process of talking to the driver of the Uber when you arrived?
Objections to leaving.
Overruled.
Yes, I believe he was.
Okay, so your understanding is he was still conducting the investigation of the window tint?
Correct.
Thank you. Now, I also know, yes, it has been 3 years, and I understand that your, memory is different, but is it standard procedure that the officer who does the pat down is the one who would take any contraband or weapons or anything out of the person's body?
Typically, yes.
So is it reasonable to say that whoever did the pat down was the one who discovered the narcotics?
Yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
From the cross hearing.
Okay.
One moment.
I'm going to ask you a CAD question while Ms. Stern's getting ready. I know you don't read them a lot, but is there a way to query the system that far back to say, well, give me the CAD reports that would indicate Cannon or Snow was the primary officer?
I believe that you can. I just don't know for a fact. Judge, I just don't know how that works.
Okay, I'm not holding you to that. I can tell you, as between the two of us, you know more about the system than I do. And through no fault of yours, this case has been bedeviled by an inability to get some of the potential discovery and you may get to go. The lawyers aren't going to leave today until we figure out the best way to see if there is a CAD report that would reflect, assuming Snow or Cannon called in, we're pulling over a Lexus. It makes a whole lot more sense to me why there are times that don't seem aligned with your report or what else is going on. If Witkowski wasn't at the scene, and maybe he could call it in because it's part of a larger operation. Hey, dispatch, we're pulling over and he's getting radio traffic from Cannon that is in that secondary channel. But it seems like the officer who is initiating the traffic stop is the one radioing in what's happening.
Right.
Now that you're in narcotics, are there times when the officer who's initiating the traffic stop is not the one who calls it in because it's part of a larger operation?
No, typically, like, if someone's doing a stop for us, they're going to call in on the main channel. I'm doing a traffic stop on such car in this area, and it gets logged as they're on a traffic stop for that area.
Okay.
Just briefly, Your Honor, losing my voice, it seems like. You mentioned that you were aware of the investigation into the driver for the window tint violation, right?
Correct.
Are you aware of what time she was, that investigation was resolved?
What was your word?
Sorry. Are you aware of how that investigation resolved with regarding the window tint?
I know that she was issued a warning citation.
Okay. What time was she issued that citation?
I don't know.
If I showed you the citation, would that help you to refresh?
I think I have it right here if you want me to look at
Okay,
this.
sure.
That's easier. I think I do. Is yours clearer than mine?
Mine's pretty clear.
Okay,
Should
can I see that one?
yeah.
I can't read it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can I approach on it?
You may.
Yes, it says 5:34 p.m.
Okay, so that would be 1734, right?
Yes.
So she was issued a citation at 1734. The dispatch indicates this is going on somewhere around 1400, 1500,
Correct.
right? So that's like a 2-hour gap, right?
Correct.
Your report indicates you were there at 1324.
Correct.
Seems like it took a long time for her to be issued a citation.
I don't know why it says that time, ma'am. I have no idea.
Okay, so we just don't have accurate times and dates on our reports from law enforcement officers?
So argumentative question, but point well taken.
I have an objection, Your Honor. This is going outside of the scope of my redirect. Will I have an opportunity to also ask a question based upon what she just asked?
Maybe.
Okay.
You also have Detective Cannon's report in front of you, right?
Yeah, I believe it's here, yes.
Can you check the time on his report, please?
Yeah, 1 second.
What time is the date and time of the incident reflect?
It says 1845, but that doesn't necessarily mean how these work. I think that's just when it was approved. I don't know, but it says 1845.
Okay. How many lines is his report?
Line?
This is Cannon's report.
Detective Cannon's
1,
report.
2, 3, 4.
Okay. So 4 lines on this report. He's the arresting officer. Is that your understanding?
He did the traffic stop.
Okay. What does it mean when there's a report that says not supervisor approved?
That just means the supervisor hasn't sent it to the system to be approved or as approved.
Okay. So then this report hasn't necessarily been approved by a supervisor. Is that-
Objection, relevance, Your Honor?
Overrule.
Do I know if it's been approved? I don't know.
When it is approved, do we see not supervisor approved on the
No.
report?
No.
Okay. What is a supervisor looking for when they're approving a report?
They're looking at the narrative for misspellings and things like that.
Do they check for like typos or errors? Any other fundamental factors that the supervisor is looking for?
I'm not a sergeant, ma'am. I don't know.
So that's a sergeant's responsibility?
Yep.
Not a detective?
Correct.
Okay. Are you aware of Detective Cannon's disciplinary record?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Can I approach the
To
document?
collect your, yeah, do you need,
I just want to ask one question. on this.
Sure.
I just want to forget all my stuff.
we'll make sure you get all your papers. You can leave it up there. I think Ms. Iqbal has a question for you about that.
Okay.
So if you look at the citation, officer, that, of Ms. Sample, this Ms. Sample, did she sign this citation?
No,
What does it say there in the
the
signature line?
jail.
What does that typically mean, officer?
Typically, that means that if you do a traffic stop, and instead of, obviously, if they're going to jail, instead of them having to sign it, you just put jail, as in they're going to the jail. So you don't have to have them sign it.
Okay. Okay, no further, oh, and just to clarify, only the defendant went to jail, Ms. Sample did not.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, nothing further.
All right. May this witness step down?
Yeah,
One moment.
I just came, yeah, one moment, Your Honor.
Okay, it's been a few
Can I
seconds.
have one last question?
About what?
The search, what was the basis for
The search of the car or the search of your client?
Mr. Perez person?
Okay.
Detective Reynolds, at the time that you approached Mr. Cabrera after the dog had alerted and smelled the marijuana, did you have probable cause to arrest him at that point before you?
So that's a legal question that I'll answer, not a one for an officer to answer.
Well, in terms of what the officer believed he was able to do at that point, in terms of what all the factors that may have amounted to probable cause.
You can ask him about the factors, but you're asking him to make a legal conclusion that you're asking me not to make. And that's not a proper question for an officer.
Respectfully, and officers do that every day. They have to make those determinations in terms of whether at that moment they could make an arrest. So my question is whether the officer or the detective believed he could make an arrest at that point. Whether he could, whether he believed he could make an arrest
At which point?
at the point before he patted Mr. Cabrera down.
Before he patted him down.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe he had probable cause to search his person, yes.
Judge, may I ask a follow-up question? Because now
She's not necessarily done. So let's just, she said one question, but I don't know
believe
that
it-
she's done because one rarely means one.
No, it really was one. I had to clarify. Did you believe that you had probable cause to arrest him before you found the drugs?
To physically arrest him?
Yes.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, just a follow-up, Your Honor. Now, did the defendant tell you that he smoked marijuana before you patted him down?
Yes, he said earlier.
Smoking marijuana a crime currently under Georgia.
It is.
Did you have probable cause at that point to arrest him?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Nothing more.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Just to follow up against.
We're done. We've played good ping pong. You guys have asked lots of questions. But I think I have heard enough to work through whether, in fact, there was probable cause to search or articulable suspicion to pat down or et cetera, et cetera. So lots to work with. I'm going to let you step down. Appreciate your time. Don't take any of those papers with you unless you brought them. Anything you didn't bring, leave right there and I'll let the lawyers collect them.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Officer, don't let any of the other officers leave, and please don't talk about this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other witnesses for the state?
No other witnesses from the state, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
You're welcome.
Ms. Stern, you're going to call any witnesses?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll look at it.
Oh, Judge, may we take a 2-minute break?
Sure.
She just left to use the restroom.
She's doing a good job of running things for you. Does she need to go with you?
Get a little too excited. I'm not gonna say anything. Yeah, I think your client wants to use the restroom, and so he could, and Kathy Hall's in the restroom.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Yep. It's 2 minutes. It's not 10 minutes.
Just the bathroom.
It ain't that many questions to ask her. It ain't that many questions to ask her. I ain't finna practice right now. Cases.
Yes. More so. More so. Oh, thank you. She's more so, yes.
Thank you.
Are you Miss Samples? We're ready.
Go ahead. I'll sit to the witness stand now.
Thank you for coming.
This will affirm that the testimony will be able to prove the whole truth of the truth. Now, you state and spell your name for the record.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
State and spell your name.
Ayana Sample, AYANA SAMPLE.
Get a sip of water. All right, Ms. Sample, how are you today?
I'm well, how are you?
Good, thank you so much for being here. You already spelled your name, great. Where do you currently live?
At 3140 St. Rose Parkway, Henderson, Nevada, 89052, apartment 1097.
Oh, thank you. So you're in Henderson, Nevada.
Mhm.
Did you ever before live in Atlanta?
Yes.
When did you live in Atlanta?
I moved from St. Louis, Missouri in 2011 to Atlanta. And I've been in Nevada for like a year now.
Okay, so you were in Atlanta until
2011 to 2020.
Okay. Are you currently employed?
Yes.
Where are you employed?
Spirit Airlines.
Great.
Flight attendant.
You're a flight attendant.
Mhm.
Okay.
Is that the yellow planes?
Yes.
How long have you been with Spirit?
Going on my second year.
In July of 2018, where were you employed?
I was working at WorkSource. It was like a
WorkSource.
security place.
Okay. Did you do anything other than work in cybersecurity?
Not cyber security.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me
It
back.
wasn't cyber security.
I
It was just
misheard.
like a security officer.
Oh, okay.
WorkSource. Mhm.
WorkSource. Got it. So aside from being a security officer with WorkSource, did you do any other kind of work in July of 2018?
Just Uber.
Okay. So you were also working for Uber.
Yes.
About how many hours a week did you work for Uber?
Let's see, maybe 20 to 25.
Okay. And what kind of vehicle did you drive back in July of 2018?
Oh, a Lexus, 2008 Lexus.
What was that?
350.
Okay, what color?
Blue, dark blue.
Do you personally know the young man right here? Can you see him?
He was a passenger before in my vehicle.
Okay, but did you personally know him?
I did not personally know him.
Okay, and do you currently personally know him?
No.
Okay.
Do you even know his name?
Just what I read on the what was it, subpoena.
Okay.
Okay.
But that would be the extent of your
That's it.
knowing him, is maybe Ms. Stern said his name is X or you saw it on the subpoena. That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
So you mentioned that he was a passenger in your vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think we established this, but you had never talked to him before that moment?
Never.
Okay. Do you remember around when this was, the incident that we're here for today?
Yeah, it was the end of, in July sometime.
Okay. How do you remember that he was in your vehicle?
I talked to you before and you recalled that it was way back in July.
Okay. But do you remember the circumstances of the time of year or the weather or anything like that about the day?
Yeah, it was raining that day.
Okay. What else about the weather? Do you remember?
It was just, I just remember it was raining that day. That was it.
Okay.
Nothing spectacular. It rains in Georgia all the time, but I do recall that day it was raining.
Do you know who requested the Uber that day for Mr. Cabrera's ride?
I do not.
Okay. Do you know the name of the account that was used?
I don't.
Did Mr. Cabrera say anything to you about requesting the Uber when he got into your vehicle?
Nope, he didn't.
Okay, so he didn't say anything like, oh, somebody called this for me or anything like that? Okay. Have you been promised anything to be here today?
No.
Okay. Or asked to say anything in particular?
No.
About how many times have you and I spoken?
Maybe two or three times.
Over the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have I ever asked you to say anything in particular or remember something a certain way?
Not at all.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. And it takes a lot of time. I appreciate that a lot.
Welcome.
So aside from it being a rainy day, do you remember the time of day this was?
It was noon. It was a little bit afternoon.
When you say afternoon, do you just mean like in the afternoon or you think it was just a bit after 12 p.m.?
It was after 12 p.m., I'm sure, but before dark.
Okay. Can you set the scene a little bit? I mean, where were you when you got this Uber call?
I was Roswell area. Just going down Roswell, I would say. Then it beeped in and I had to come pick him up at this apartment complex. I don't know the name of the complex. I just know how to get there. It was raining, like I said. I picked him up. He was normal. Hello, how you doing? I asked him if he was going to this place. He was like, yes, just to make sure that I'm taking him to the correct address. And that was pretty much it. I pulled off out of the complex. I made a right and turned on my blinker, and not even 30 seconds later, the cops were like on me.
Okay.
I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? I just turned on to Roswell. So I went up the street a little bit and pulled into a gas station.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop you there for just a minute.
Okay.
When Mr. Cabrera got in the car, where was he sitting?
On the back passenger side.
Was he sitting there the whole time?
Yes.
Okay. Did he say anything to you in particular?
Hi, how you doing? When he got in, hi, and that was it.
Okay. Did you smell anything in particular?
Nothing.
You didn't smell any kind of odor?
Nothing.
Okay. Is that something that you think would stand out to you?
Oh, absolutely. Because I
Why?
don't smoke at all, so I would definitely smell something. I've had people in my car before, they've had perfume or just coming out of their house with food, cooking food. I would definitely have smelled something on him.
Does that happen in Ubers often, where people will get into your vehicle and they smell like something in particular?
It's happened.
Okay. How would you remember that, whether Mr. Cabrera had a strange odor that day?
Because I'm not used to smelling different type. I mean, I'm not used to smelling like smoke or weed or anything like that in my car. So I would definitely be able to smell a different type of scent.
Okay. And I had asked you before if you had smelled anything, right? When we talked beforehand. And did I specifically ask you?
Yeah. Can you say yes or no, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That was the court reporter who is invisible to you, but he's working very hard this afternoon. So when you're asked questions, it's important for, if your answer is yes, to say yeah or yes or yep. But if you say with a mask, it's real hard to tell, and could be no, it could mean yes. So I'll be more vigilant as well. So your answer is whatever it is. It just needs to be words rather than Okay.
When we had spoken before, did I specifically ask you about certain odors?
Yes.
And what did I ask you if you smelled?
He just asked me if I smelled anything different in my car, smoke or anything like that.
Okay, so did you smell marijuana or anything like marijuana?
No.
It's been very clear that she said that she didn't smell marijuana.
Correct.
Just wanting to establish I didn't lead.
You've
her.
established it.
Okay. What was Mr. Cabrera's demeanor like?
He was quiet when he got in. I mean, he just sat there. We didn't say much.
You said it was quick, right? So he wasn't in your car for very long.
No, he wasn't in the car very long at all.
Was this a normal Uber drive for you?
Yeah.
You get pulled over often?
I mean, not as far as that getting pulled over. No, I don't
Okay.
get pulled over. That was the first time I've ever been pulled over.
Okay. And where did you say you pulled over?
At a gas station. I can't recall what gas station it was. I just know it was on Roswell, not too far from where I picked them up from.
And what did you notice that indicated you needed to pull over?
The cop car behind me, the siren.
Okay. Was it one vehicle or more than one vehicle?
At that time, it was one vehicle.
Okay. So then you said you pulled over into a gas station.
Yes, ma'am.
How many law enforcement vehicles did you notice at that point?
When I pulled over, the one behind me, and then a K9 truck pulled over as well.
So you noticed one patrol vehicle and then a K9 vehicle afterwards?
Yes.
Okay. How many officers did you notice?
3.
Did an officer eventually initiate contact with you?
Yes.
How did the officer initiate contact?
He just walked up to my car, and it was still raining, so I just put my window down just a little bit. And first thing you say, "Hi, how are you doing?" I said, "I'm fine." And then he said, "Well, the tint on your windows are a little dark." And I was like, "It's how they came." I mean, and that was pretty much it. He's like, "Can I get your driver's license?"
Okay. Have you ever been pulled over before for violation of window tint?
Never.
Okay. Did you get the tint altered on your car?
I'm sorry.
Did you alter the tint on your car?
No, it came like that.
Okay.
The tint was already on the car when I purchased it.
Okay.
How long had you had the car?
2012. So.
A few years.
Now you mentioned you rolled the window down when the officer came to your car.
Yes.
Did you notice if any other windows were down in your car?
There was no windows down. It was raining.
Okay. Officer came to your window. Do you remember what that officer looked like?
No, he was a white gentleman. That's all I know.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
He was a white gentleman. That's all I can remember.
Does he have a beard or no beard?
I don't remember.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Tall or short? Can you remember?
I couldn't even tell you.
Okay. Now you mentioned there's an officer with a K9. Did that officer ever come to your window and talk to you?
Nope.
Okay. Officer's talking to you. How long is that conversation going on?
It wasn't long. Well, he just came up and he asked for my driver's license, and then he went right back to his car. The second time he came back, gave me my driver's license, and we didn't talk really after that.
So so from the point that he got your driver's license and the time it took for him to bring you back the driver's license, how long of a period of time was that?
Maybe 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. You ultimately got a warning, right?
Yeah.
Was it
He
a
gave me a warning? I can't even remember. I know he didn't give me a ticket, so I guess he gave me a warning. I can't even remember, to be honest with you.
Do you remember at what point you received that warning? Okay.
No, I don't. I'm
No problem.
sorry.
That's okay. So the officer speaking with you, what's happening with Mr. Cabrera?
When I look back, he was out of my vehicle, and his hands were up.
Okay.
So they were patting him down.
Okay. How quickly did that happen?
I mean, it had to be quick. So, I mean, within a minute, maybe.
Okay.
I look back, he was out the car and patted down.
Did you hear any conversation about him getting out of the vehicle?
No.
Okay. So you don't recall an officer instructing him to get out of the
Oh,
vehicle?
yeah, he opened the door. The officer opened the door. I didn't see my window going down or anything, or hear the window going down. The officer must have just opened the door and he was out.
Okay. Did you hear Mr. Carrera say anything to the officer?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I heard the officer say, you can get out the car. You need to get out the car. I did hear that.
At any point, were you asked if it was okay to enter or access your vehicle?
Never. No.
So when you were in the vehicle, were you asked to step out so they could search?
No.
When you were out of the vehicle, did they ever ask permission to search your car?
No.
Okay. So why did you end up getting out?
I just got out the car because I was going to go talk to the officers to see what was really going on. Because I was kind of like, wait, hold on a second. What's going on here? And then it was just me and two other officers that were there, but they weren't saying anything. And then the other officer came up that had taken him to the car. He was sitting in the back of the police car at this time. And then he was like, oh, we found some drugs on him, crack. And I was like, oh my gosh, what? And that was pretty much it.
Okay. Where does the dog come into this?
The dog came in after I got my driver's license back. I remember looking back, he was out of the car. My passenger was already out, and then the dog came up. I seen the dogs just sniffing around the frame of the vehicle. And it was before I got out the car. Then I got out the car after the dog had sniffed around the car.
Okay.
So it didn't take that long. It was just a few minutes. The dog sniffed the car.
So you were still sitting in your vehicle.
Yeah, for a few minutes. And then
Okay.
I got out because I don't like dogs.
Okay. And you see is there an officer with the dog, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it was on a leash. I do remember that.
Okay. And you're still sitting in the driver's
At
seat.
that point I was.
And what do you see the officer doing with the dog?
Take the dog around, and then I got out of the car. He was taking it around the back. I don't know what the dog was doing, if he was sniffing all around, but I did see the leash of the officer take the dog around the car.
Okay. Were you inside or outside of the vehicle when the dog started sniffing your car?
Started sniffing inside the car.
Okay. Did you ever see the dog sniff inside of the vehicle? And where were you at that point?
Sitting in the front seat.
You were still sitting in the front seat. And tell me, what door was open?
The back passenger door that my passenger got out of.
And what is the dog doing?
Sniffing. The dog was sniffing like the frame of the door. He never actually got into my vehicle, but he was sniffing. His 4 legs were on the concrete, but he was just sniffing around the door.
Okay.
And like the bottom of the door.
Do you remember what kind of dog it was?
Looked like a German Shepherd, I guess.
Okay.
Canine dog. That's what it looked like.
So while you're still sitting in the front seat, the dog's nose is where?
The dog on the frame of the door. When I looked back, he was sniffing the frame, like he had just come up and he was sniffing the frame of the door.
With the door open?
With the door open. The door never closed. It was still open the whole time when he got out the car.
Okay. Did you ever see the dog jump into your car?
Nope. No.
Is that something that you think you would have noticed?
Yes.
How far were you, once you got out, how far were you standing from your vehicle?
Probably from me to you.
Okay. And could you see the back passenger door from where you were standing?
Yes.
Would you be able to see if the door was opening or closing?
Yes.
Would you be able to see if the dog was jumping in or out?
Yes.
How confident are you that you
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I didn't really finish asking the question.
No, but I bet you were going to ask, how confident are you that the dog didn't go inside your car? But you can ask it.
You're good at this, Judge.
Yeah. I've just been listening to you for a little while.
Sorry about that. How confident are you that the dog never jumped into your vehicle?
Very confident.
Can you put a percentage on it?
100%.
Objection.
I get the point. Let's move on.
Okay. When the dog was sniffing around the open door, did you notice the dog do anything other than sniff?
Nope, that's all he did.
Was he standing up or sitting?
He was standing on all 4 feet.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Standing.
Okay. Did you ever see him sit?
No.
Okay. Did you ever see the dog scratch at your seat?
No.
Okay. Were you okay with the dog being in your car?
Objection, relevance?
What is the relevance? Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't, but
How she felt in terms of the officers invading her car space?
okay, but it's really not relevant to whether they had a basis to go in your client's pocket. Next question.
Let's see. Did you ever see handcuffs on Mr. Cabrera?
I know he had his hands behind his back. I do remember that, but I couldn't see the handcuffs.
Okay. So you mentioned before that pretty quickly, Mr. Cabrera was told to step out of the vehicle.
Yes.
Where did they bring him after that?
He was just like a step aside of the car, had his hands up, they patted him down, and they took him to the back car, the police officer's car, and set him in there.
So while you're still sitting in the driver's seat, is Mr. Cabrera standing outside somewhere with the officers, or is he in the patrol vehicle?
He's standing outside the car.
Okay. For how long of a period of time?
Probably 10 minutes at least.
Okay. Did you notice anything in particular that triggered them to bring him to the patrol vehicle?
No, just after they patted him down, I seen him walk him to the patrol car.
Okay. And when you say they patted him down, how close were you to seeing this happen?
Oh man. Probably from me to the judge.
Okay, so
Close.
about a foot?
Like
Maybe 2 feet?
Well, they weren't in your car, so it wasn't a foot away. They were outside your car.
Yes.
And he's on the passenger side of your car, so it's the width of your car and then more space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you notice how the officers pat down Mr. Cabrera? Like in terms, are they going down the outside of his clothes, or do they go in his pocket?
They went down the outside of his, just the outside. I didn't see him go in his pockets at all and on down.
Okay.
I remember he turned around and they went back on the outside again.
Okay. Did you hear Mr. Cabrera say anything to the police
Not a word.
or
No.
to anybody else?
No.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Questions for Ms. Sample from the state?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Sample, when you were pulled over initially by an officer, and then the K-9 unit was right behind the officer?
I don't know where the K-9 truck came from. I just got pulled over. I seen just one cop car, and then all of a sudden that K-9 truck came over.
So the K-9 truck was already at the scene before
Nope.
the officer, hold on, let me finish asking the question. The K-9 truck was on the scene before the first officer came to you and got your license?
No.
Okay,
Oh, wait, whoa.
okay,
Hold on a
see?
second.
You gotta listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah, obviously, yes, I do.
Okay.
So when I got pulled over, I pulled into the gas station. There was one cop car there. I was sitting there, then another car, the K-9 truck came up and it was parked. So I was already sitting there.
Okay, so, but you hadn't spoken to the officer who had pulled you over at that time?
No.
Okay, perfect. And so when the officer who pulled you over, he came to you and he told you about window tint, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you got a, have you ever measured the window tint on your car? I know you said you had it since 2012.
Mm-mm.
So you don't know if it was over the limit or above, or under the limit, do you?
I hope it was I mean, they sold it to me like that, the dealership, so.
Sure. But you don't know whether or not. It was
Oh,
over.
I don't.
Okay,
I don't.
okay. And
It sounds like you bought it used. If you got it in 12 and it's in 08, you
Yes.
got whatever someone had done to that car.
Yes. And you don't know what was under that car before you got it?
No.
Okay. And I had a conversation with you before this hearing started this morning, is that correct?
Yes,
And that was the first time I've ever spoken to you, right?
yes.
And when I was speaking with you, I ask you about, were you able to observe anything that occurred to the defendant after the pat down? Didn't you say no?
Wait, hold on. Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
I asked you when I was sitting outside with you here, whether or not when you got out of the car and you walked to the other officers, were you able to observe what was going on with the defendant at that time?
No, he was in the car.
Okay.
He was in the
and when
cop
he
car.
got out, were you able to observe what happened after the pat down?
Yeah, he walked to the car. The officers walked him to the vehicle and he sat down in the vehicle.
Okay, so you didn't see anything other than that?
That's it.
Okay. And when you were talking to the officers, were you actually like having a conversation with them, or were you just standing next to them?
We were having a conversation. I mean, it was like, oh, the rain. It was just like, we were just talking about the rain, how hard it's been raining, but that was it. Nothing that was going on with my passenger.
And how close were you and the officer standing to your vehicle when you guys were having this conversation?
Probably from me, a little, probably to this podium right here where she was standing.
Ms. Sample, you said that you pulled into the gas station to get off Roswell Road. Did you pull your car under any cover, or was your car out in the rain?
It was out in the rain.
So when you got out, you were standing in the rain, or then you moved to an area where you were under like the big roof of a gas station?
Yes.
Which,
I got out the car and then I ran kind of over to the awning where the officers were standing.
okay.
And just to clarify, so your car was not under the awning, but you and had the conversation under it?
Yes.
Okay. And so when the sniff occurred the outside, not when anything of you were talking about the frame, correct? When the sniffing.
The frame of the door, not the whole frame of the vehicle.
So did the canine ever go around your vehicle?
Yeah, he went to the back, from the back passenger around to the back trunk.
And at this time, did you have your license with you?
Yes, I have my license with me.
No. Did you already give it to the officer? I meant.
Oh, yeah, I had already gave it to the
So he
officer.
had your license?
No, he brought my license back. I was still in the vehicle at this time that the dog had came.
The dog had already sniffed outside, or this was the first time he was sniffing?
I had my driver's license back with me when the dog was sniffing the frame of the door. He had just brought me back my driver's license.
Okay. And give me 1 second, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
And so, ma'am, did you have an opportunity to observe the defendant being taken into the custody, being handcuffed?
No, I just seen him get patted down and his hands went behind his back. When I got out, the last time I seen him, he was already walking back to the car and he was sitting in the vehicle. He got in the vehicle.
Of your vehicle or the police vehicle?
The police vehicle.
Okay. And is that the police vehicle that's ahead of your car?
Behind the
On
one
the other
behind.
side of your car?
No, behind, yes, the one behind the car.
And you were in the awning?
In the front.
Away from the car?
Yes.
Okay. No other further questions, Your Honor?
So I just want to go over the timeline, make sure I understand it. And I don't mean, was it at 3:10? I'm not going to ask you specific times. It's sequencing.
Okay.
You're doing your thing as an Uber driver and you get a notification, there's a ride at an apartment complex. You end up picking up Mr. Cabrera, the defendant, You confirm with him your destination is X. You pop back out on a Roswell Road, and pretty soon thereafter, blue lights and siren.
Yes,
You go a little further down Roswell, pull into a gas station.
yes,
Officer comes up to you, chats you up, tint, this and that, asks for your driver's license.
yes.
He takes your driver's license somewhere, presumably to his car. We don't know. You can't see it. Which is next? Dog going around car or right rear door opening and you hear an officer say to your passenger, you need, whatever the words are, you need to get out of the car.
That was next. My door opening.
Okay. And the pat down that you saw before or after the dog going around the car?
Before.
And you getting your driver's license back from the officer before or after the dog going around the car?
Before.
And then you eventually got out of the car, and I'm confused. Was it because you're wondering, how long am I going to sit here? Or it's because there's this dog around the car and you don't like dogs? Because I sort of felt I heard both.
Yeah, I really don't like dogs, but yeah, I was just concerned because I had been sitting there for a minute. I just wanted to see what else was going on.
And there were officers who were standing in a place where you could, this is the awning, and you went over to talk to them.
Correct.
Which is not where the defendant was.
No.
He's in a patrol car.
Yes.
Okay. And it was when you encountered, you spoke with the officers under the awning that they said, oh, we found drugs, whatever words they used.
Yeah.
But you did not do that until after dog had smelled car, to include the open door and the door frame.
Well, I was in the car when the dog came. It's just a split second, and then I got out the vehicle and went around. So he had started sniffing, because I looked back. He had started sniffing the frame. Well, we opened the door, like a little bit of the frame down there, and then I got out and went in.
So whatever the dog was doing after you got out of the car, one, you're not looking at your car, you're walking away from it. And then two, you're engaging the officers.
Yeah, I was.
I say engaging, you're chatting with the officers.
But I could still tell because the officers were standing like right here. My car was right here. So when I walked around, I still could see the dog. So yeah.
Okay, but I'm just curious, you were focused on the dog or you're focused on the officers you're walking towards?
Probably the officers.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely the officers.
All right, thank you.
Because of that question, may I ask one question?
You can, and then I'll see if there's any redirect.
When we spoke outside earlier, I asked specifically whether or not you had opportunity to observe the canine sniffing around your vehicle. And you told me that you did not observe because you were walking towards the officers. Isn't that correct?
That's not true because you did not ask me that.
Oh, okay.
Can you repeat your question?
Yes, Your Honor. I asked before this hearing, Ms. Sample, that was she able to observe the canine going around the car? And isn't it true at that time you said, no, you did not see what the dog was doing because you were walking towards the officer?
We didn't say anything about walking towards the officers at that time. You've never asked me anything as far as, oh, I was walking towards the officers. You didn't.
Did you say that? You told me about the two, you were talking to the two officers, right? Because how else would I know?
From our conversation right here.
No. Okay. One moment, Your Honor. I've done that before. Your Honor,
Yes, ma'am.
can we, I don't know, you don't need to approach, but can I call somebody who was to impeach the statement, somebody, Ms. Hall, who was there with me when we were having the conversation?
Not right now, but when we're done with this witness, we can decide whether that's going to happen.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions for Ms. Sample?
One moment. My question I have is, the drugs were, are you saying that the drugs were found prior to the canine conducting the sniff of the car?
the drugs, the officer came back and said that he found drugs on my passenger, Jose. I don't know. I never seen any drugs. I just what in conversation, this is what the officer had told me.
I forgot, it's an interesting question. When we were doing our sequencing, did you learn from the officers about them supposedly finding drugs on your passenger before or after the dog sniffed around your car?
It was after.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge. Nothing further.
Ms. Stern, any redirect?
Just to establish factually the distance, Your Honor, may I approach the witness with a,
I don't know
let
what
me
we're
ask a
looking at.
question, sorry. Do you know exactly how long you were in the vehicle with Mr. Cabrera before you were pulled over?
5 minutes, if not, I don't even think it was 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes.
If I showed you a map, could you verify this is the proper route that you took?
Yes.
May I approach?
I mean,
So before you show her something, you showed it with it. Do you have an objection
I
to?
don't even know what this is. I have to see it. I didn't even look at this.
It sounds like it happened close in time, so I don't know. I mean, if that's something that you can refresh your recollection with, well, I'll let you do it,
I'd like
but,
to admit it, Your Honor.
okay.
I don't objection to that admission. You can't admit something that she has no basis to lay the foundation for what this is, Your Honor.
Well, we don't know that yet because it hasn't been shown to her, so
Okay, fair.
we'll see what she says. You may.
Coming out.
There's an address, a starting address and an ending address.
Where's the start? Oh, the ending's right here.
So on the left side, it'll say the address where there was a pickup and then the address where the traffic stop was reported.
Oh, wait, lifetime. Okay, came out, turned, where's Roswell? Is the blue Roswell?
If you don't recognize what's on there, you don't recognize what's on there.
Y'all can't read this map.
Is it that you can't read it or you just need more time?
I just don't understand the sequence here of
But
it.
take a
going
moment to
around.
orient yourself
Okay,
to the map.
okay, that's fine. Down. Yeah, this is it. This is it. Because this is the apartments are Lifetime Fitness attraction. It was behind. I came out, went around, and then I got onto Roswell Road and took it all the way up. Yep, this is
And
it.
where does it show the end?
Right. The end. It's the gas. This would be the gas station.
So does that accurately depict the route that you took from
That's
picking
the
Mr.
route I
Cabrera
took.
up
This is Roswell. Yep,
until you were pulled over?
I was pulled over.
And how long does that map estimate the drive?
4 minutes.
Okay.
You're late. 4 minutes.
And does that seem right in terms of your memory as well?
Yep.
Okay. I do move to admit D3 into evidence.
That's the first one you're tendering. You've
Yes.
had some other exhibits. Okay, any objection to D3?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted.
Thank you. That's all I have, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Sample, from coming all the way from Henderson, Nevada, back to Atlanta.
Yes.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, at 4:47, what are we gonna do?
1 moment, Your Honor. Your Honor, I would like to call a witness in for rebuttal.
Okay,
Oh, you announce it.
Who's the witness?
Officer Cannon.
so stop for a second, please, Ms. Iqbal. Calling Officer Cannon, we are not gonna finish. I'm not gonna prohibit you from calling Officer Cannon, but I can't imagine that Ms. Stern will be done in 5 minutes with Officer Cannon. I mean, she'd be entitled to ask him almost every question she asked Reynolds. So that's up to you. But if you want to call Cannon, and I'm certainly not prohibiting you from doing that, then we should pause the proceedings and find another date where we don't have to fly someone in from Nevada. So it should be simpler to plan when you're going to have Officer Cannon testify. But I thought you were going to call Ms. Hall for the very narrow point of what was said out in the hallway. That's a 5-minute witness. Okay, and you can, but there's no way Cannon is a 15, 20-minute witness. And sure, you guys talk and we'll see.
And Judge, if we get to that very narrow, I'd like to call Ms. Hall to the stand.
Okay.
Just gonna object for the record.
Okay, just make sure you are able to be heard. What is your objection to Ms. Hall being called to the stand?
I guess it's just always been my understanding, whether right or wrong, that it'd be improper to call an attorney who's a party to the case as a witness. I've always needed to have an investigator with me when I'm talking to a witness because I know I can't call myself to the stand. And you know, halfway through the hearing, it was you know, Ms. Hall, and then it switched. So it seems improper in terms of testimony coming from the party to.
Okay, well, it to me is circumstantial in the same way that you might be called to testify if you had been riding the elevator and there were two jurors talking. You're the defense counsel, but if you happen to overhear jurors talking and needed to make a record of that, you might testify. My guess is Ms. Hall wasn't planning on testifying, but what's been relayed to me is that Ms. Sample said something on the stand that conflicts with something that she told the lawyers. And one of the two will be the questioner and the other will be the witness. So Ms. Hall will be under oath and be like any other witness. She just happened to have a bar license.
With the bias that comes along with it too, Judge.
I'm sure you'll make that argument. All right, Ms. Hall, welcome to the stand.
Good morning, good afternoon. Please stand, raise your right hand. Please swear to affirm that testimony that you're about to provide to this court will be true, no truth, and nothing but truth and nothing but truth.
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat.
You still got it. That's good.
Please state your first and last name to the board.
Ashley Hall.
Okay, get a little closer to the microphone. There you go.
Cassie Hall, Kassie Hall, Hall.
Who's your favorite judge, Ms. Hall?
Judge McBurney.
There we go. All right.
Ms. Hall, prior to this hearing starting, did you have an occasion to observe me speaking with the witness, Ms. Sampson?
I did.
Sample, I'm sorry, Ms.
Yes,
And were you, did you hear parts of the conversation?
I did.
Can you tell the court what you heard?
I heard you ask the witness, Ms. Sample, what all she saw and with the traffic stop. And most of the conversation, she said she could not see anything as far as the defendant and the dog or being searched.
Hold up, stop.
It's a narrative at this point. It's not responsive to
to the question.
Well, it's direct exam, so narrative is more appropriate. I'll be certain to have Ms. Iqbal focus it in if it seems like it's straying, but we're pretty tight so far.
Just to end more specifically, what she said was the only thing that she could see very clear was the defendant with his hands up, and that he was being patted down by the officers.
And did you hear me specifically? Did I ask anything about whether or not she was able to observe the canine?
You did.
And what did she reply?
She said she was not able to see because she got out of the car. You asked very specific questions as far as when she got out of the vehicle. She said she got out the car to go talk to officers about something completely different than the incident, and that she did not see that.
And did you hear me ask her if she saw anything after the point when she went to speak with the officers? If you don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I remember you asking. I don't remember what the answer was.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Stern.
No question, no.
Okay. Well, that was awfully easy, Ms. Hall. No cross exam. Dang, you may be seated. Thank you.
Now I have a rebuttal to the rebuttal witness.
So who would that be?
Our investigator, who's standing outside while they were talking.
Okay.
Yeah, he's ready to come in.
Okay.
We're going down this road and let's go. Okay.
Well, she completely changed her testimony. So
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Completely. Like,
for other reason, I would have done that. You know what I'm saying? I don't.
This could be a question.
This is what I learned, that testimony will give will be true, also nothing but truth. Y'all see, you stay your hand to the record.
Howard Steele.
Your last name?
Steele, S-T-E-E-L-E.
Thank you.
Mr. Still, in what capacity do we know each other?
I'm your investigator.
Okay, and you've been working on this case with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How long have you been standing outside this afternoon?
Since approximately 12 o'clock.
Okay. Were you outside with Miss Sample since she's been here?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you standing next to her when the prosecutors were talking with her?
I was sitting across the aisle on the benches.
I'm sorry?
I was sitting across the aisle on the benches.
Okay. Could you hear their conversation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What types of questions were they asking Miss Sample?
The ladies asked her what she knew about the case, what happened at the car when she got pulled over.
Okay. And what did Miss Sample say?
She reiterated that she got pulled over, just picked up a rider in her Uber, pulled on Roswell Road, got pulled over. She pulled over in the gas station. An officer came up beside her on her driver's side. She said that another officer came to the rear of the vehicle and approached the passenger.
Okay. Did she talk about whether or not she gave consent?
She said she did not give consent.
Okay. Did she talk about what she could see?
She says that she could see through the dog in the passenger side rear area sniffing around and could see the passenger with his hands up being frisked.
Okay. Nothing further. Thank you.
I just have one question, Your Honor, just super brief. The young lady that went and got you, what did she say to you when you were outside, when you were sitting outside and she just got you?
Which one? I'm sorry?
The young lady over here, she's the one that came to notify you that you're next up to testify. Is that correct?
Correct.
What did she say to you?
She said I might need to testify.
Okay, did she talk to you about any of the case or the facts?
No.
Thank you, nothing other further.
All right. May Mr. Steele step down?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Probably weren't expecting this today, huh? You did a good job.
Mr. Steele, if you want.
Yeah, so we're gonna pause the record, and I'm gonna release the court reporter, and let me see who else is on. We're gonna talk a little bit about discovery, but
Before we pause, can I just ask this to case intends to leave the evidence open or is
Maybe I misunderstood. You intend to call Cannon?
No, I'm
Oh.
sorry, Your Honor. We weren't clear on that. We're not calling.
Oh,
Officer
well,
Kemp.
great. Thank you for clearing that up.
Sorry.
Okay, so do you have any other witnesses you were going to call, Ms. Stern? All right, so then the record is closed, still with this caveat where we're going to talk a little bit about discovery. But Cannon, we don't need to bring people back to hear from Cannon. Anything else you want to get on the record at this point, Ms. Hall or Ms. Iqbal?
Are we leaving argument for next time? That's fine. I just want to.
what was the question?
Argument
Argument.
in case law?
Yeah, we can, I think we'll, hold on one second.
It's 5 o'clock. So he's trying to be considerate for time. And so he's trying to see if we can finish.
I think that makes sense, just given some of the constraints. But we ought to do it soon. We don't need a big production for that. We need to make sure Ms. Rivers is available and that the lawyers are available. So I'll work with Ms. Nelson, who will work with you all for the argument phase. And we'll cover that then. Before you release anyone, Ms. Iqbal?
Individual in the court to speak of the discovery.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to release the court reporter. Thank you, Ms. Rivers.
Thank you, Judge. See you tomorrow.
Yep, you too.